morning. I'd like to call this work session of the Southampton Town Board to order on this 15th day of July, 2021. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Sunday, would you please call the roll?
Supervisor Schneiderman.
Here.
Councilwoman Lofstad.
Here.
Councilman Martell.
Here.
Councilman Bouvier.
Here.
Councilman Schiavone.
Present.
All right, thank you. So we're going to get started. We have a couple items on for this morning's work session. We're going to be joined on this first item by Len Marchese, our controller. We also have counsel here too. So I have gotten a number of requests, and I've been trying to figure out how to best approach the requests for various community items, mostly bike lanes and sidewalks and traffic safety type of improvements to deal with, the ever increasing amount of cars that seem to be on the roads and the frustrations people are having, and they want to be able to use bikes safely, they want to be able to use sidewalks safely. So we've had requests coming out of Noyak, we've had requests coming out of Hampton Bays, along Shinnecock Road over there near Ponquag, near the bridge. So we don't have a fund to do these things, and typically, a highway department would have some money to do these kinds of things, and it gets frustrating because they're good projects. So I thought of bringing to the board a conversation with you guys. Whenever, obviously, we bond money and the bonds have to be paid back over time, it's a particularly good time to borrow, though. Interest rates are at sort of a record low. I don't know the last time we had such low interest rates, and our municipal credit rating is so good that we really get money at very low rates. So if we're going to do infrastructure, it's a good time. But at the same time, those bonds have to get paid back, and so they're it does fall on the backs of the community to return those funds to the lenders. So I thought maybe a way to approach this is to have a conversation, and maybe we would come up with a number that we could put on the ballot and let the voters decide to create a fund to do exactly these kinds of things. So sidewalks, bike lanes, traffic safety improvements. And I tried to generate a little bit of a list. But the list is not something that, it's something that we could change or modify. If we have the fund, we can have a committee that will prioritize and decide how those funds should be spent in those areas. Am I leaving anything out, Kathleen? Did I cover the basics? Len? So now, where did I come up with the $10 million number? I looked at some estimates from our municipal works department, from Christine Fenton, and it felt like 10 would give us most of the projects, the ability to do a lot of these projects. Not all of them, but we could do some significant traffic safety improvements with a $10 million bond. Doesn't have to be 10 million, it could be 5 million. But we're running out of time if we're going to put it on the ballot, because I do think if we're going to do this, we don't have to put it on the ballot, but because these sort of go beyond the current infrastructure. It's one thing to just repair your current infrastructure. We have to do that. We got to repave the roads as they deteriorate. But when you're adding new elements to your infrastructure, bike lanes and sidewalks and things like that, I believe in those kinds of things, but I think that giving the voters an opportunity to make that decision, to sort of tax themselves for those things, makes a lot of sense. And we're running out of time. If we're going to put it on the ballot, we would need to, Kathleen, do a special meeting, right? I'd have to have a special meeting next week on the 22nd. So we could do this. So I want to give you guys an opportunity to talk about it and tell me what you want to do. So that's why I put this on, because it's time sensitive.
So the first obvious question is, isn't this a responsibility of the highway department?
and adding it to their budget. Things that you just described are things that are under the highway department. It's not new infrastructure, sidewalks or bike lanes. These are things that we've been dealing with for quite some time. So I'm wondering if
It is new. It is not the repair of current sidewalks or maintenance of current bike lanes. These would be new bike lanes and the ones that don't exist right now, and new sidewalks that don't exist.
All right, again, but I
But
guess
yes, highway is,
And currently in our budget, in our capital budget from highway, and Len, you could correct me if I'm wrong on this, we have $100,000 allocated, unbonded, currently. So the line does exist in highway for these things.
right, we could increase that line, but $100,000 doesn't go very far, as you know. So,
well, it's not. I think your point is that there is a line there. It's just
Right,
not
and-
enough in it for what you're.
And this would be the question, is like, would something like this go into the budget on a rolling, basis, or do we want to, put it out for a bond? Currently, there's a lot
that is the
of,
question, because yes,
Right.
Len and I, when we prepare the budget for next year, we could do a capital project and program the debt service. This just would give the voters an opportunity to weigh in on it. That's, I guess, the difference.
now, there's a
Just
lot of
concern-
infrastructure money available, right, from the federal government, if the current bill goes through the way it is, and on the state level as well. And I wonder, having some things ready sooner rather than later, would we be in better position to get matching funds from the state or the federal government on this?
Len, do you want to take that? I mean, are a lot of these grants, federal grants, are they matching? Do we have to put up money to get the money?
Probably.
Well, yeah, there's some state money, we've already been awarded additional capital highway improvement money from the state, was part of the adopted 2020.
Right, the CHIPS increase
Yeah.
as well.
So, yeah, we have that extra money. The fact is, it just is not going to address some of these new things. I mean, and any grant usually has some type of local match, plus you have to also advance the money. I'm not sure what particular federal legislation you're speaking of. I'm not sure what that does for us.
I'm
Most of
watching
that
it.
money goes.
I'm watching the news. I
Yeah,
know it goes
most
to
of that goes through the state, and
Mm-hmm.
it just kind of gets sucked up in the state system, and I don't see that coming down to a town local road, so, whatever.
So my question is, how do you separate out the maintenance component of new infrastructure such as this, if we want to call it that? I don't really think it's reasonable to say it's a new infrastructure, but if you put in a new sidewalk because particular areas, since we'd really like to have a new sidewalk, there's a maintenance component with it. And from my experience dealing with the highway department, that's often a big part of the component, is that quite often they get overgrown, or, grass starts growing and they have to do that work. So
no doubt
there's
about
it. Plow.
there's money associated with money.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
You're talking about,
Across from Gabrisky.
a $10 million bond is $1 million a year. This is a 10-year useful life project. So you would have to raise $1 million on top of whatever you normally would raise in the highway department annual. Forgetting about the bond. I mean, the bond is just a mechanic, right? So where the pavement hits the road, literally, is where, when you have to pay that back, right? So next year, so if you did this now, we'd borrow it in '22, you wouldn't have to make a payment until '23, but in '23, you'd have to provide for $1 million plus interest on that bond.
So who would be making those decisions? Would that be highway department? Or
Well, theoretically, the highway superintendent does have a say in the matter, but you folks also control the purse strings on where you want to spend money. So if you've identified a project that you want to fund, I would think that you can dictate that that project be done. Otherwise, he can't just spend the money. If you say spend it on a particular project A, and he says, no, I'm going to take that money and spend it on B, I don't think he can do that.
And that was my question as well. Who picks the projects and when those projects are going to be done?
I think it's cooperative.
I think that it's I think it has to be a cooperative. These are really under the jurisdiction of the highway superintendent, and he has to work cooperatively with you folks to figure out.
No, it wouldn't be until next year, so it would be a different highway superintendent,
Yeah.
whoever that may be, and Yeah, they would have a lot of discretion as to how the money
Yeah,
gets spent.
I mean, and most of these projects require engineering design and whatnot, and that's a process that has to take place. And, so this would just be setting the framework of funding. Now, this can be up to, say if you use 10 million, it could be up to 10 million, and you could choose at the last minute, well, I'm not gonna borrow 10 million, I'm gonna borrow 5 million, or I'm gonna borrow 7 million, something like that. Those are options that you can have.
Does it have to be spent in the first year, or can it sit for a year or two as, like, let's say some projects move forward in the first year, and others move forward in year 2?
Yeah, no, it can take longer, sure. The funds roll over from year to year.
Well, I mean, it would have to be, most of those types of projects are multi-year projects, particularly if you're talking about,
Yeah.
a larger set of infrastructure.
Well, you might use some of the money to do planning, engineering.
Yeah,
you know.
there's a big overhead. That was the point I was trying to make
It- it-
before. It's not the actual cost, it's the overhead of getting to that place.
Well, you also were bringing up the
Future
the maintenance.
Yes,
That there's-
which is part of
There's
it.
additional costs on top. If you build a new sidewalk, it's, every once in a while, you're gonna have to patch it, or, you're gonna have to plow the snow off of it, you're gonna,
Now,
have
the
to
villages handle that a different way.
weed it, there's all kinds of
It's
expenses.
a kind of an interesting point with the way this bond would have to be structured. Your ballot would include the whole town. All of the residents of the town would vote on it. However, the jurisdiction that would pay it back is the highway fund, which is not the whole town.
Right.
It's so if you're a village resident, you got a right to say yes or no, but you're not going to be paying for it anyway, because it's the people that are in the highway fund that would pay for this.
It's part-time.
And I think we talked a little bit the other day, we had some dialogue with regard to who's paying for, on the other road, the Hampton Bay. And it looks like it would, in a lot of instances, it won't be whole town, it will be the highway fund. So.
It won't be the people in Hampton Bays. They'll be part of that, but it's a larger group, but it's not the whole town, because the villages won't be paying.
The whole town minus the
But
villages.
But the whole town will have to vote on it, though, too, which is, again, is a kind of.
It's a little disproportionate, because they're
Yeah.
voting on something they don't.
Usually
pay
you
for.
vote on something you have to pay for, right?
Okay, that vote is a land swap, not building a road. Okay.
No, I'm just,
So
Thank you,
that's-
Tommy.
it seemed to be the same answer.
We're not,
Well, it
we're
does
nowhere
make sense,
near
because
or
parkland is
there.
whole town. Everybody gets to enjoy the parkland.
Yeah,
And it's really-
right, and if
it's
this was a
an
benefit,
incident.
if this was a bike lane from one area of the town to another that people from all over could benefit from, why wouldn't it be right for
Right, well, I
them
think
to also
Tommy
pay
John's
for it?
point is important, that the vote, they're actually voting on the swapping of the land, not the construction of a road.
Right.
It's,
This is
there's a,
just
it's
for
connected.
future consideration.
Yes. Or, I
So-
don't want to mix the two topics.
Okay, yeah, so the two projects that, I shouldn't say two, because this wouldn't be limited to two, on Shinnecock Road and Noyak Road, both of these areas are beset by traffic. It's horrible. It's hard, right? People are walking on the side of the road, and they're trying to get to our amenities, to the beaches. They're trying to, enjoy this, and they can't unless they get in their car in their own neighborhoods and drive to the beach. That's a quarter-mile away, because you won't put your kid out on that road on this bicycle or her bicycle, because it's just too incredibly dangerous. And I see them as very similar projects, because they're connecting residential areas with our beach amenities.
Well, I mean, even local bike paths, out where I live in the West Hampton area, bike paths, trying to get that line painted has been a 4-year process. And because it had been paved over by another project, and the line hadn't been replaced on it.
Is that a county road or a town road?
Town road. So I'm trying to describe the issue delicately.
So-
But that's the kind of situation that you can end up in.
Let me provide some more context, like where why I am suggesting this, because these are good projects. There's no doubt that, Shinnecock Road needs a sidewalk. I see people walking there constantly. It would be much safer for people. A number of people in the Hampton Bays community have been asking for it. This area in Noyak, it's not safe to walk on the road. These are good projects. How do we, either we say, we're not going to do it, we're just not going to do it. I'm sorry, great idea, we're not going to do it. Or we do it without going to the public. We just say we're going to borrow the money and we're going to do it. And we can do that.
Well, I
Or,
don't want to
Hold on,
conflate,
let me
though,
finish,
Jay.
'cause-
Don't conflate a good project with the process, which is what I'm trying to.
well, I'm laying out a third way to do this, which is to say, let's give the public an opportunity to weigh in on whether they want to do this. It just makes it a little bit easier. We don't have to do that. We could just say we're gonna bond the money and do it.
We could.
And, first of all, we do that. We bond all the time for different things. But it is not unusual for towns to do highway bonds. There is it's pretty common. Sometimes they're $30 million bonds, $50 million bonds. Because towns go, you know what? We want to get a lot of roads done this year. People are complaining. And they do a major overhaul of their highway systems, and they do a bond, and they put it on the ballot. There's a specific provision for doing this that allows the public to vote on it. And again, we're a board, we're 5 members. We don't have to do this. I'm putting it out there for public discussion. If we decide to do this, we're out of time, right? I have to have a special meeting, and we can put it on the ballot.
I mean, we have a road review commission. I just keep thinking of individual scenarios that to try to, as a hypothesis of how this would actually work. So I'm still not entirely understanding it. So if we want to bring a private road into the highway system.
Yeah, there's a process for that.
Right. And we go through the
Those
commission.
people usually pay for it within that
Yeah.
area.
That's Town Law 200 you're talking about.
Right, but also the runoff control, it's the cisterns have to be put in, all of that has to be done. Sidewalks sometimes are included as part of that. How do we make that distinction?
This talks about it also, even traffic control devices and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Whether it's lights.
Good point, yeah, I hadn't even thought of that, yeah. Okay,
Yeah, those are big parts of infrastructure that you need.
Right.
Crosswalks.
That can make it safer.
yeah,
You could do illuminated crosswalks.
Well, we have you guys know that there's so many roads within the town system that aren't part of our system.
Right.
That we have meetings now with the trustees where we're talking about some of their roads, they want us to take them over. The conversation, once you get involved with roads,
You have county roads, town roads.
it just is endless.
State roads.
The variations that we have here. We have a meeting scheduled now with the trustees in another week or two. They ran out of money on their maintenance of all of their roads, and a bunch of their roads, you wouldn't know the difference if it was a town road or if it was a trustee road. You would think, oh, that must be the town.
and that's the management overhead that I get concerned about,
Yeah, so
because
they wanna
trying to
give
make
those
those
to us.
distinctions.
They
is
want to give
hard.
that to us so that we can pay for them.
Widow
Yeah.
Gabbets.
Well-
Or the county wants
We should
perhaps to help us
control the
share them.
roads. The
doing
trustees
that.
shouldn't have, I know historically, and I'm not saying that they couldn't
No, I
handle them,
think
they have
there's a
been
good
for
argument
years.
for the town to take them over.
I agree.
Some of them, there's a couple of them.
Yes. If
And-
it provide, we're kind of diversion, but
Yeah.
if it provided access to the beach, then they should keep it. But if it was just kind of a through road, we
Right.
should keep it.
So how would that work, let's say with the county, with the Aspilka Park right now in Eastport? So that's a county road, and it needs crosswalks, so we're dealing with the county to try to put all of that in. There would be some cost-sharing benefit to doing that. Would these funds be able to be applied to that?
Yeah, I think so, because we are envisioning some of these improvements having to be made either adjacent to or in conjunction with county roads. We would need permission from the county highway superintendent, or as the commissioner of DPW.
Yeah.
We talked about that when we wrote the bond resolution.
Okay, great.
Or state roads, same thing?
Yeah, we would need,
Did we include roundabouts or in this or?
it was a pretty broadly written
Right.
bond resolution.
Well, that would be highway infrastructure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it was written so that
A
it
lot of
would,
people have
would
suggested
include that.
roundabouts.
And so what happens most of the time.
Often in state, county road areas, not town.
Right.
Some are town, like the Millstone, Scuttle Hole Road. That's been talked about fixing that roundabout.
See, the thing.
That's town.
When you differentiate between different types of improvements, everything in finance has got to do with probable useful life of the project. So you have to wind up defaulting to the lowest common denominator on that. But if you were to just tell me, I wanted to spend $10 million on roads, we can borrow that for like 25 years. But if you're going to include traffic signals and stuff, now all of a sudden it drops it down to 10 years. So that's why we're at a 10-year payback.
Right.
because we kind of didn't know what we wanted to spend the money on. The more specific you are, the lengthier time perhaps I could get in a bond, but it doesn't seem like we're very specific right now, so I have to kind of keep it broad, and you're stuck with 10-year payback period.
Well, in
I
some
think
cases,
we need more broadness, because there's, like you said, there's, you know, signs or lights or sidewalks, and it's a whole jumble of stuff, so, and I think that that's what we need to address. You can't address the problem with one thing, in my opinion.
in the sidewalks to schools, you know, that funding that's also available. I mean, I'm learning a lot about this because of this park, and the complexities of something fairly, you know, you would think is fairly simple, actually becomes very complicated. And having to put a crosswalk in to provide parking so people can access the park safely.
The town has received funds in the past for, Frank, I think you were involved, Safe Roads to Schools or something like that.
Sometimes.
That we've gotten money in the past for those types of projects, so,
And
we've
put-
submitted applications on a recurring basis to get those funds.
So that
And we
would
put
fall into
things
that
in.
fund?
Well, we would maybe use this money as our match,
Yeah,
you know,
okay.
there would be other
All right, that's what
grant
I was.
opportunities, sure.
So we have more flexibility.
So
Yeah,
we
go
have
ahead.
areas that have sidewalks that were required in the planning process, and when things were built, and, you know, they were to put a sidewalk in front of their, you know, in front of the property, you know, to connect up to a wider array of sidewalks. I'm interested in, not just for this particular area, but, you know, when we do that, we really, I'm assuming that we have some kind of, you know, overarching plan to do that. Because in this little there are 7 pieces of sidewalk along this corridor that we're looking at. And I don't mean to just be focused on one area, but clearly there was a plan on this, and, you know, there was a need for this kind of amenity in this area. It just,
Often sidewalks get put in as part of the site plan approval of the developer.
and we have another
That's
one
the
over
base road, you know,
there.
and it's
Yeah,
just-
no, and sometimes they waive them. I mean, I've had situations, in
A lot of
depending on
these are
where the area is, the
residential
planning board
areas.
waives the sidewalks.
So,
Yeah,
and
but I don't
if
wanna
it
be
gets
myopic.
waived, then
This is a
can we do it
town-wide
under this fund?
Thing. It's, you know, just because you're talking about one area.
So remember, like,
They
every,
waived
But
it
I'd rather
because
that-
it wasn't practical at that moment to
Yeah.
just put
Yeah.
a 100-foot sidewalk leading to nowhere.
Right.
Made no sense. So, but if you made it part of a 1,000-foot sidewalk connecting 2 places,
Right.
now it makes sense.
Len, every year we do
Sometimes
what?
it's the look, you know, it's just aesthetics at the time, you know.
Len, each year in the highway, we do about, what, $3.5 million bond
Yeah.
for a road, and it's really just goes to
Well, it's
paving.
more than just roads. It's roads, it's equipment,
Drainage.
it's drainage, it's
But it doesn't,
sidewalks, it's
but
whatever.
the highway superintendent,
Bulkheads.
basically, it's the cost to maintain the current infrastructure, pretty.
No, the highway, the capital money is specifically for construction or.
But it includes all the repaving, right?
Well, repaving, we don't call as doesn't really qualify. I mean, it could be maintenance, but it's not really. In order to bond stuff, it has to be a long-lived asset, so it's, you know, it's, a
In the
paved
highway
road will
budget.
last 15 years once you repave it, you know. That's the point. It's not just a maintenance item.
I guess what I'm
Maintenance
saying
item
is
like
Alex
when you
has a
paint the
certain
stripe
pot,
on the road.
Alex has a certain pot of money to do all the paving, right? He just doesn't have additional money to do some of these other things, right?
Yeah, he gets a baseline, I mean, he requests, the highway superintendent, giving away from him, puts in a budget like every other one of your departments. And we look at it in terms of what can we afford? Well, you know, we have a 2% tax cap. Bear in mind, say this is $1 million, you know, when this comes due, when you folks have to vote to raise the taxes, that's gonna pierce the tax cap. That's a big chunk. That's not gonna be, assuming that you don't cut anywhere else, this number is gonna, you're gonna need to pay for an extra $1 million. You don't just have an extra $1 million in flexibility in your tax cap. So that's gonna have to be a consideration. I want to tell you that now. I mean, I don't want you to go in and say, you didn't mention that. Well.
I don't know that that's an absolute, this would
I
be in
figured.
2023 you're talking about, and there's
You'll
a
have-
lot of factors may change.
Absolutely. You know, you might,
There's growth in the tax base.
your ECDs are gonna drop off, you know, so you'll have room there. Maybe your ambulance districts will change. A lot of things happen in
Right.
3 years. Sorry. But that was a standalone, it would cost money.
ECDs are.
All I'm just saying, it's not an absolute that this will lead to a piercing of the tax.
Nothing's
cap.
an absolute. I know that. But
But
You
it's
need to
likely.
be aware of it, that you'll need to raise
That's fair.
$1,100,000 in extra taxes in
In
'23
the highway
to start to
district,
pay for it, yes. In addition to what we normally do. The way we normally budget
But Lynn, I just,
is we average everything, Jay. We try
right,
to,
but what you're basically saying, if you do these projects, so if you want to do these projects, let's say the Noyak sidewalks, the Hampton Bays sidewalks, and some of these other things, it's going to lead to debt service, right? So the really question is, if you want to do those projects, do you want to give the public an opportunity to vote on them? Or do you want to just say, you know, if they voted for us, we're their representatives, we believe these are really important things, and we want to do them through just a regular bond, not put it on the ballot? Or not do these projects, or discuss that at a later date? I'm just saying, for this ballot, we're up against,
a timeline.
A timeline.
But I agree with you that it is absolutely the best time for you to borrow money. That is for certain. If you are gonna, don't come back in 3 years and say, you know, I think I want to do this project, because then I'm gonna say it's gonna cost you double. Do it now, while money's cheap.
right.
This would be the time to do it.
You know, we can also discuss doing a lesser amount, doesn't have to be 10 million.
Well, I don't think it's about the money, that's not my concerns. My concerns, well, whatever it ends up being, I agree with what you're saying, that this is a good time to borrow.
Right.
So to me, it's not about that. To me, it's about the unforeseen costs, the overhead management, the stress that's going to be put on having the town have to manage a fund amount that's going to be appropriated for, with another entity, and that has to all be managed. And I don't know how much management part of that is stressing or going to add a burden to what we already are experiencing as a burden staff-wise and otherwise.
But we're suggesting, though, that you already have that burden, because you need to, if you don't take care of it, your residents are gonna get injured, they're getting in accidents, things are happening. So this town, whether we like it or not, the population and everything is increasing beyond anybody's expectations, and the services that people need, you have to provide. That's your responsibility as a
Using
board.
these-
And I appreciate
summer
that
homes are being
point,
used
so I-
now.
No, it's not like we're a declining population. It's not like we're stable even. You just have to go outside, and at any given moment, you'll see
Right.
how,
The summer homes are being used every day of the year.
yeah. And that means they're cars, and it's not one car, it's 2 or 3 cars, and they're all on our roads, and the people are on our roads, and they need to have services, so.
Well, a lot are on our roads. Just make that point.
Well, this idea of complete streets has been something that's in a lot of this town planning as well. We want sidewalks, we want bike lanes. So the question is sort of, how do you get there? You know, to put this on the ballot, Kathleen, it's 4 votes, right, supermajority.
The bond is not on the ballot.
What?
Good morning. The passage of the bond resolution is a supermajority, but placing it on the ballot is a simple majority.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
All right, so it would take three of the 5 of us to put it on the ballot.
Would parking lots be included? And could parking lots be included in this?
No.
No.
I specifically didn't ask for parking lots.
Yeah,
It's centered around traffic safety and traffic, movement.
pedestrian and
Okay.
traffic safety.
Yeah.
Got it.
So
Sidewalks,
lighting,
bike
those things
lanes,
aren't part of that.
Crosswalks.
That's traffic control lighting, or,
But
safety
not
crossing,
illumination,
cross lighting,
road
cross-
access illumination, sidewalk illumination for safety, if you have people walking down streets that normally they wouldn't be
It
walking
had to do
on.
with traffic safety. It was
Yeah.
broadly written that way.
There's a lot to consider on even the smallest project in that respect. I'm just trying to be realistic.
So I just,
And there's a certain look to our roads that we want to maintain as well. The country road look and predominantly, throughout the town of Southampton, I believe is important for the value of the properties, to put in sidewalks, lights, curbs and all that. It's a different look. And these 2 particular asks, if you will, they were directly related to getting kids and people to the beach in the specific area. So now it's kind of turning into something that's much broader. I don't know how we would define that or choose. I know there would probably be a committee somewhere, and that's going to be
You know, if you
It's gonna
prefer
be
to take
difficult.
these up one by one during the year, we can do that.
Mhm.
And, just discuss each one and look at.
Well, Shinnecock Road is flat. I mean, that, and I believe there's probably room within the right-of-way to do something there. that
There's some
looks nice.
encroachment, but I think it can be done.
Right, right, you have driveways and.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. You know, so that, I don't see that as a
If you prefer,
huge,
we
huge
can do them
project.
one
It's
by one during the
significant,
year.
but,
Well, see, that's, who's the "we" in that regard? Because I still feel this is a highway superintendent.
Well, no, you're the
Department.
appropriating bodies. so
Right, but
you
not,
folks have
not
to-
managing each and every project as it comes, but there's oversight involved in all of this.
You could wait till next year and see what the priorities of the highway superintendent are. What,
it should be noted that villages have a different way of handling their sidewalks. They require the property owners in back of the sidewalk or adjacent to the sidewalk to take care of the sidewalk. I don't know.
Yeah, it's
We-
like
we don't do
city-
that here.
City,
New
York
cities do
City
that,
does.
buildings. The buildings are
Well-
responsible for the sidewalk in front of it.
Right. These are the villages within our town.
you know, and there's also a lot of other road things. There's lots of roundabouts that people are suggesting. There's some flooding on Pine Neck and on Longview. Maybe not Pine Neck, Royal and Longview out in Flanders. You know, it'd be great to elevate the ends of those roads. There's lots of different things that we could spend money on. Sidewalks are important, so are bike lanes, so it's up to you guys. If you want to put it on the ballot, I'll,
No, I'm afraid if we don't have a baseline, say if it's 5 million or 6 million to get some of these safety projects started, especially in Noyak, Hampton Bays, you know, there's a real problem. People are trying to go to the beach, they're trying not to use their cars, they're trying to do the right thing, and you can't get a baby carriage across Shinnecock. You know, you'd have to wait for half an hour. They need a sidewalk. I'd rather see a sidewalk than a stoplight, you know, if that's your choice. You know, I mean, so I think it's come from the public requesting things from us that they live with every day. So I think those need to be addressed, you know, over and above that. Maybe we want to budget some more to highway for that. But even, you know, blinking lights for speed limits, you know, crosswalks are a big issue. I've had probably 5 requests for that. We had a kid hit in Hampton Bays not too long ago from walking in between the traffic. So these are all, to me, these are all safety issues. We have to lump those, get those on started, and then go from there.
so you're thinking of $5 or $6 million.
I'm just saying, whatever, take the request, whatever we agree is really a safety issue, let's put that together and see where it goes from there.
But on the ballot or just do it
I would think, well, I would do on the ballot,
on the ballot?
yeah.
So 5 to 6 million, a little
I'm
smaller
comfortable
number.
with, I'm comfortable with that, because I
This is a
think.
good time to borrow, you should
You know,
borrow.
yeah.
But-
We, you know, we found out that a simple bike lane from Red Creek Park to Good Ground Park was $1 million.
Yeah.
So $5 million is not
Doesn't
gonna
go
go,
very-
doesn't go very far.
That's why I picked 10.
Yeah, I know
'cause
10 sounds like a big number.
Because
you know.
I wanted to
It's
make
a
sure
multi-use
that-
lane.
Part of the reason in my thinking for 10 is, you know, I didn't want to end up just being able to do one project, you know, and maybe it's east of the canal or west of the canal and create this tension. I wanted to make sure we had enough money to sort of treat the town as a whole and maybe do several projects across town. So that's sort of where the 10 came from. You know, each sidewalk, unfortunately, is like $1 million or more. Just to do, sidewalks are expensive. It's a lot of engineering, a lot of, you know, crossing of driveways and things like that, and moving of vegetation.
And the one in Noyak is in the moraines, and it is constricted. That's probably why it's never been done.
There's
Just
curbing,
in
retaining
pieces.
walls associated
Yeah,
with that one. It's-
yeah, that one was estimated at 1.3. It said a different, it's 1.3. But that's, yeah, and that's retaining walls and drains, and, you know, there's a lot to it.
So
But
I'm
not
sorry,
everybody on the street is
But
is all in favor either, so you're gonna have some issues like that, you know, and I'm sure there'll be
People
some
don't want a
litigation.
sidewalk, I mean.
Yep.
Julie, what's your thoughts here?
I have a couple questions. Can you tell me what the average financial impact would be on a, you know, homeowner of a $500,000 house? Thank
How
you.
did you know that I sent somebody a text on that? 1.1 million would be 2.027 in tax rate. What the hell does that mean?
Okay.
It's a couple.
My house,
Is this
say,
for
is
a $10 million
$500,000. How
bond?
much is it going to cost me on my tax bill per year?
You gotta give me a second on
I
that.
will, so, because I have other questions.
Is this for a $10 million bond?
Yes.
It's gonna be like $10 a year.
Over
So,
10 years?
and what, so, and about how much should we bond for? What's the estimated cost of doing the two sidewalks that I think that we're talking about? $1 million plus each, plus some other stuff. Plus, you know, this is the beginning, you're gonna hear from, I'm sure, a lot of other constituents are gonna have,
many
you know,
parcels we have?
we need a sidewalk here too.
Part-time.
And we need bike lanes, and we need
And
all
bike,
those
right,
other
and bike
things.
lanes.
That-
And it's
that's
a
my
great time to
concern.
bond, so I'll wait till I hear that answer.
Couldn't tell you.
Um,
I'd have to look it up. It's not that important, the parcel count, it's the assessed count.
I know, but a rough estimate, you
Right,
could,
just
you
give
could
me
take
2
the $1 million
seconds.
a year and
Talk
divide it
about other
by
things. I'll
how
get
many
the answer.
parcels we have.
Okay, and I still have
The
more
average
questions, so we have
parcel.
time. So we don't have to spend it all, right? If we bond for the 10 million, if we don't use it,
Well, you can pass a bond resolution, and when it comes to borrowing, I don't have to bond the whole thing at once. You could bond portions of it, or the
Okay.
whole thing.
Because
Or even
I-
if you bonded it all, you don't have to spend it all.
right, because, and that's kind of my point, that can we get some, and understandable rough estimates, maybe from Chris Fenton or Highway, about what some of these will cost during the process, and then we have a better idea.
Well, we do have estimates. I don't know
Oh,
if
okay.
Jay shared that with you. We do have some costs.
Sorry?
So I think what we tried to do is pick 4 projects, like in 4 corners of the town, that kind of, so Jay tried to,
Be judicious.
yeah, like, we didn't want to put it all out east of the canal, and then, you know, so we tried to put it in all 4 corners.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So, and each project, we would, if you allocated $2.5 million to all 4 corners, that's kind of where you get. About $13.50 a house.
$13.50,
a dollar a month.
$13.50
Per half
per
million.
homeowner
Per
per year.
homeowner per year for 10 years,
On a
Per half million.
$500,000 assessment.
for a $10 million bond,
Of assessed valuation.
for half a
Right,
million
you-
dollars.
Half a mil.
Okay,
yeah.
so it's 13. So if it's $1 million, they're in for $26 a year. Okay.
It's like $1 a month.
So those people in the big houses on Dude Road who don't want sidewalks,
They're gonna pay
just
more.
smiling.
They're gonna pay more, but they always pay more.
They're gonna pay more for those sidewalks that they don't want.
You know, that's the way our tax system works.
But
They
the-
also pay for schools.
Then again, one of the projects, I don't know if it's on that list, but a project that's been suggested is a bike lane that goes down to, what's the beach, Scott Cameron Beach, right, and Mecox Beach. So we have a bike lane down Ocean in Bridgehampton. They'd like to connect the bike lane
Down Dune Road.
that goes down to Dune Road to the 2 public beaches. I don't even know if that was on the list,
well, you know,
but that's,
no one in the West was, in the CAC West was informed of this, but we have bike lane desires that we want to do. And what I'm saying is that this could blossom to an unsustainable point, because there are a lot of things that people really want. We have issues, you know, with high rates of speeding, you know, that infrastructure can help with. And
That's traffic safety.
That's a concern here for a lot of people, you know, people driving crazy.
Painting
on the
those
road.
Chevron lines, slow people down.
Yeah, I mean, all sorts of things like that, but it can, you know, far exceed $10 million.
easily. But John, I also want to point out that there is no specific, like, these are the projects that will get done. They're just samples of types of projects. If you guys.
They're the
have-
driver, that's what I'm
if you- If
understanding.
you have West Hampton, no, it's a $10 million fund, right? So.
No, but I mean,
highway
the need is
superintendent
driven by
and the
a
town
real
board,
need.
If you have projects in West Hampton to bring to the table to decide, say, I want some of this 10 million to go to this, that, or the other, that gets part of that conversation. If it's not on that list, it doesn't mean it can't be done.
No,
That's
I
just-
understand that. And what sort of prompted this was, you know, and we all get the same email, so, you know, I know exactly
What prompted
what's
is
prompting
I'm
this.
getting all these requests for projects,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure what to do. They're all great
Well, you're not the only
projects.
one getting the request.
Right.
We're all getting it.
So I said,
appreciate that.
okay, maybe it is time for the town to do a bond, a public bond, to do traffic safety, pedestrian safety projects, so that we have the funds to do some of these and give the voters a chance to weigh in on it. I think they'll support it personally. They might not, but I would feel better moving these projects forward, knowing that the public has said, yes, please, we need more sidewalks, we need more crosswalks, we need whatever it is, you know.
But
more
there
bike lanes.
is the added complication that there is a disproportionality here that the people who vote on this have to understand. So when you put that as a ballot in front of people, they have to understand there's a group of people that are being asked, is this a good thing to do? And they're going to have to pay for it, but they actually don't get a benefit from it. And I think that needs to be made
What's the
pretty clear.
disproportionality?
Within a, let's say within a
that
village, right? They're going to vote on something, but in fact that.
They actually won't be paying for
They
it,
won't have to
John.
pay for it.
No, they won't.
But they have to vote on it.
They have to vote on it. Well, that's the disproportionality
It
that's
goes-
exactly what I'm trying to
It
get.
goes the other way around.
Yeah, I got it
Right.
backwards. I got it
People who
backwards.
could be voting no, and it wouldn't even
And
be
it
costing them
would-
anything.
Right, and that has an effect, you know, I mean, that's
Yeah,
an
it could
issue
get
to
voted down by
concern.
people who actually aren't even paying.
Who don't
for
care, or
Well,
aren't
it's hard-
interested in
It
it.
would be hard to explain that to everybody.
Yeah, it is, it will be. I mean, where you have some ballot referendums coming that are sort of in that.
Well, we would have to word this ballot particularly careful. I mean, I'm not sure exactly how the wording would be, but I think we have some sample language.
Yeah, and we can hear that, and I still haven't, I don't have the sense of the board, so.
So right now, I've been working with bond counsel. I did send him a draft, which he approved, at least at this point in time. And it really mimics your bond resolution. So it's verbose, unfortunately. But the proposed ballot proposition would be, shall the bond resolution entitled, "A Resolution Authorizing the Issuance of $10 million Bonds of the Town of Southampton, Suffolk County, New York, to pay the cost of pedestrian and traffic safety improvements at various locations within the town, including but not limited to construction or reconstruction of roads, sidewalks, bike lanes, curbs, and related drainage, and the acquisition and installation of traffic signs and traffic signal systems in and for said town," be approved. Sorry.
Big enough.
Not that close. So Julie, you still had other questions, right?
Well, actually, so speaking of what you just said about what it's used for, would this be able to be used for potholes that make roads unsafe?
No.
No, okay,
We have the money for that, though.
okay.
You know, people ask for crosswalks, and in order to have a crosswalk, you need a place to start it and finish it, a sidewalk or some kind of landing, and that's kind of where this came from, because in the Long Beach area, and I'm sure in Hampton Bays on Shinnecock Road, people are dodging traffic. I mean, these are two sidewalk projects connecting our beaches to residence areas. I think we can do it within our budget. I hope. Let me ask you,
Within the current budget or without this 10 million?
without the 10 million, over a couple of years.
Well, I don't think,
Okay,
I don't
right.
see how that
So let me ask you, $10 million bond would put us over the tax cap, right?
Not necessarily.
Do the capital bonds get factored into the tax cap rating? Okay, it's not like school districts where if you're building a capital project, that gets taken out of the calculation.
no,
It's in our
Okay.
calculation.
in the calculation.
Even if it's for road safety and pedestrian safety and safety of the
Everything's in.
people of the town, and, okay,
Everything is in.
all right. Julie, I know you have other questions.
No, I think that was the most important one you answered, so
But
everything else was kind of just
again, I
throwing
want
stuff out.
to just address, Tommy, John, two things you said. It doesn't necessarily mean we'll have to pierce the tax cap. It's a lot of factors that will come into play by 2023, though, including, changes in the tax base, how much new
Well,
construction there is.
That's a big if, though.
If you guys are currently on a moratorium, so there has been hardly any growth in our assessed valuation. I mean, there's less than
Right.
0.5%,
Right.
whereas previously we were getting 10, 8, 9, 12%.
Yeah, but that's
growth.
more a tax rate question and not so much a tax cap. The tax cap is on the levy, how much we collect. But there might be other funding sources that come in, revenues may increase. It doesn't necessarily mean we're gonna pierce the cap.
But when we
So-
come off this moratorium,
And
it's
the
gonna
other,
be interesting.
and the other thing you had raised was, not the tax cap question, but that we could pay for this within our current budget. And I don't see that. I don't see that. I think
No,
this
the
is
current
millions
highway
of
department
dollars.
is spending every penny I'm assuming that
Mm-hmm.
they're spending it as efficiently as they can, and they're spending everything that they have. It's not like they're not spending it. I mean, so they're
Right.
They're spending what we give them, that's for sure.
But you
So they
would-
can spend more.
What you could alternately do is just wait till you're ready to do a project, whether it's the Hampton Bays project or the Noyak project, and we can do a bond for that project. Separate bond, not subject to, mandatory referendum. I think all bonds are subject to permissive referendum, most of them, right? So somebody could put it on the ballot.
If they're over 5 years, Mr. Supervisor, if their useful life is over 5 years, then they are subject to permissive referendum, and then pursuant to New York State Town Law, Article 7, anything subject to permissive referendum under that article, you can put out on your own.
5 years or
So
over.
if it's a small, let's say it's a $2 million bond to do a sidewalk, that would not go to, there's no provision to.
I don't know
force
the
that on
useful
ballot.
life of a.
Oh, it's not the
sidewalk.
amount, it's the useful life.
It's the useful life
Okay,
of
so-
5 years or more.
Okay.
The sidewalk would definitely be over 5 years.
Has the comptroller set the tax cap yet for 2022?
It was in today's Newsday, 2%.
Oh, it's right on too?
Straight to.
Okay.
Straight, well, that's the cap. It was probably higher because inflation between last year and this year is actually heated up. So,
So it's 2,
it's
okay.
two.
So when do you need a decision from the board?
Like today.
Is
Like-
well, that's not going to happen from me.
Before noon, would be good.
All right, so I'll go my left to right, so.
Well, we don't have the information. We
Yeah.
don't know whether this would take us over the tax cap or
Well,
not.
we-
And
Well,
if
you're
we
never
put
gonna
this-
know that. Jay is correct in that regard. We won't, there's so many variables that go into a budget.
Yeah.
Right now, we're starting to work on our next year's budget, and there's even more variables this year than I've ever had before, because we have CARES Act money, we have additional mortgage tax revenues, we have a lot of different things. We have a pension plan bill that they just sent me that's through the roof, that I can't, for the life of me, understand.
I'm gonna discuss that in a minute. so
Okay,
I want you to stick around.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different things that go into a budget. We have, our budget is $140 million, $150 million, and then CPF money. There's a lot of things that go into that. So it's kind of like, when you make sausage, right? You don't know really what's in it, but it kind of comes together at the end. And that's what's going to happen.
So if we vote, if we
I
put
couldn't
this,
tell you that it was going to.
can we pull it back if we find that it puts us over the tax cap?
We won't know.
Well, you don't have to issue the bonds. What you're doing now is you're giving people choices. You're giving the public a choice. Are we interested in doing this, yes or no? Then you get it back, and now you folks can decide. Well, let me ask, that's actually a good question. If the public votes yes to do this, do they have the right to say no?
No. So in the first. You have the right not to spend it and
Oh,
just
they
pay
still
down
have
the
the right not to
debt.
spend it?
So in the first instance, your vote will be like any other bond, authorizing the issuance of it, subject to if you decide to do it this way, subject to the voters' approval. So if the voters approve it, it's there for you to spend. As the comptroller has indicated, you can decide to spend less, to pay down the debt, to not pull the bonds, but from a
But they're pretty much
PR
obligated,
perspective.
they're pretty much obligated, if the voters approve it, they're obligated to spend it.
Well, you're asking the voters whether or not
Right.
you want it, so
They have certainly-
We shouldn't
presumably
put
you
it
would.
out unless we intend to spend
Yes,
it.
thank you. I agree with that.
We actually reversed a public referendum in a
Right.
school district, and it's incredibly complex.
Right. I mean, if you either want the public's input or you don't.
Well, the question in front of
Right.
us now is, right now, if I understand this, because this is total news to, I think, most of us on the board, at least me, that, do we want to make this a public referendum or not? That's what's in front of us today. That's what you're trying to
That's what
call
the
us
deadline
about.
is for us
Because
now.
the deadline is,
Next week.
if we
Honestly,
decide to go another way, I mean, I personally am uncomfortable making a decision. I absolutely think we need to have some of these sidewalks and some of these things in these areas, because there is a public safety issue, no doubt about it. But I also think it's a highway department responsibility. If we could augment some of that funding through this means, but I need to study this a little more personally. That's just
We're
me.
just out of time, though.
Well, yeah,
We have
but
until next Thursday. We would put this on for a vote for next week.
I'd have to have a special meeting.
Special meeting for next Thursday
Vote on it.
for you folks to vote on it. So you have a week from today to ponder.
Well, Tuesday would be
You know,
the
on
latest for me.
On the tax cap question, Tommy John, because we really don't know. But if it did, let's say, necessitate that we had to pierce the tax cap, honestly, if you wanted to do these projects, if you felt they're really important, and the two choices are we just bond it and don't put it on the ballot, or we put it on the ballot, isn't it a little bit more comfortable if you're piercing a tax cap because the public has decided to tax themselves, to say, yes, we want these things? It does make piercing the cap a little bit more justifiable. Say the public approved a $10 million bond, and, you know, now it might be a very tiny bit, it's like $1 a day, I mean, $1 a month, something like that, $12 a year.
$13.50.
$13.50, thank you, $13.50 a year. It just, you know, say, okay, well, we have to pierce, I'm hoping we would not have to pierce the tax cap, and I think it also, are we gonna borrow 10 million? Are we gonna borrow 6 million, 5 million? That's a question too, and that may also affect whether 2 or 3 years from now, you know, you'll be in that position of having to decide whether we need to pierce the tax cap. And the tax cap calculations change every year too. We don't know whether that's gonna be a 0.5% year or a 2% year, you know?
Yeah.
Well, and these are all the things that I'd like to think about, you know, because I think it's critical, you know, you have to be predictive about this. I have no idea what's coming, and, you know, if we have a highway superintendent that we can fund, or a highway department that we can fund to do these individual projects, because that's why I asked the question, what's really behind this and driving
Let me
this?
give you some perspective here. So last year, we adopted a capital budget of about 10 to 12 million. Then we modified it throughout the year, adding particular projects for another $10 million. So we have committed during the last year, 20 some odd million dollars towards projects. This is just another set of projects. So we're going to prepare a capital budget coming out in the next month or two. Probably will have a capital budget of about $10 million, give or take. This would be in addition to that. So say it's 10, for another 10, be about $20 million. So that's, in perspective, it's kind of what we did already last year.
Well, there's a difference between a need and a want, right? And part of what's going to come out of this, my belief, is that there are a lot of wants. You know, there's a priority that's set by available funding. Let's say for a bike lane. I mean, for the last 4 years in Remsenburg, that's all we've been hearing is that, no, we don't have the funding to do that, and wait another year. That's that kind of thing. If there's a realization that there's funding available, you may find that this $10 million doesn't even come close to the wants versus the needs.
I appreciate that, but then you folks then can make a decision, just like we did last year, that we felt it was important for us to have, like, say, a community center in the west end of the town. We decided that was an important thing, and we
Which needs sidewalks, by the way.
and we committed we committed we committed $10 million or whatever. We committed a lot of money towards that, $6 million, $5 million on it.
4 million.
4 plus
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 renovation.
Plus
At
renovation
least another
costs.
million, so 5
And we put that in there to make
$22
sure that we
million
had it.
building.
I'm just saying.
John, we
you-
voted on it.
You made that decision.
We're good.
You made that decision based on what was in front of you at that point. So if you did this today, it wouldn't necessarily mean in a year from now, you couldn't make another decision that, yeah, there are another 5 million worthy projects on top of the 10, we just do another 5. I mean, that's how government is. It's unfortunate that, but
And all government also provides for pedestrian safety in their regular budgets. I mean, currently, we put $100,000 in, maybe that line should be $375 that rolls over.
the
This is
problem
what I'm
with the
talking
operating
about,
money
and-
is it doesn't, it's, when
It's
you put
discretionary.
$100,000 in, it's probably not enough to do any one particular project. So
Right.
it winds up just sitting there. If
Well,
you put $1 million, then you would,
Let me ask you about matching funding. Different sources will, if we ask them, they probably could help fund this. If we dedicate $10 million and we put it, you know, we get a public referendum and positive for $10 million, will the state take a look at this and say, well, you've got $10 million, you're good?
have a long history
As
of-
opposed to putting it into the budget and having a smaller amount of money, and then when we go to the state and ask them, they see that and they're like, okay, they're working on it, and they would give us probably
well,
more
that's
funding.
a political question, and but we have a history of working with the state with regard to projects and having them provide half the funding and us coming up with the other half.
So we could
So we've had
ideally
stuff in
turn
Hampton
10
Bays,
million.
We've had stuff in Bridgehampton, we've had stuff in various parts of the town where the
Is-
state is committed half.
We have great
Okay, so I'm
partnerships
assuming
with
from what
the
you said
state.
that we could take 10 million and turn it into a $20 million worth of infrastructure improvements. Not, and don't worry, I'm not holding you on
It
this.
is possible.
It is a public
but
meeting,
That
though.
would be a conversation you need to have with
Well,
your
you-
legislators.
Or you could take 5 million and turn it into 10. So,
Yeah.
well, I think 5 million is the minimum to maybe do a couple of the projects on that list.
Can't put it in an interest-bearing account.
I think safety and public
of course not.
works projects related to safety and, pedestrian safety especially, are things that not only you folks should be at a high priority, but I think the state's a high priority as well. So it's not like we're gonna take it and we're gonna build a new soccer field. This is more public safety, not public safety, but community safety types of things.
And if they find that they get more money from the federal government for infrastructure improvements, there could be more
Through the
grants
state,
for,
state,
yeah, through the state,
Yeah,
of
that
course.
supposedly goes to the
Yeah,
county. I mean,
yeah.
we've had those discussions with the
So,
county.
Len, if we dropped it to a $5 million bond, so obviously the numbers get cut in half, right? So then the yearly costs become $500,000.
6.25.
And now it's, right, 50 cents a month, or 60.
Hey, I knew I was in control of the
Six-
CPA or something.
Then it gets to $6 a year. So I'm just throwing that out, Councilman Martell suggested that we maybe do a smaller number.
You could probably do 5 million, and then we can, in your budget, prepare a specific line item for another 2 million on your own accord, and they can vote for it when they adopt the budget.
But before we drop it, I just want to, there's some things that have not been finished. I know in Remsenburg by the post office,
Yeah,
we have a
that's- thank you.
sidewalk
That's another
that
one.
ends about 50 feet before we want a crosswalk. We need to finish the sidewalk to put in a crosswalk to make it safe. Like, there's items like that that are hanging out there that need to be addressed too.
No, I
really
think
need-
there's a lot. I
Yeah.
agree with you. The thing is, I think there's a lot more that, as a result of this work session, is going to become apparent. And I think we're dealing actually with a larger amount to put as a separate fund. It's just how it's managed that I'm a little concerned about, because it's,
You want 20 million.
if it was available, yeah. If it didn't pierce the tax cap, yeah.
Well, there
You
might
know,
be federal
it's not
money.
monopoly money. I'm
That's
very, very aware of that. And that's why I get concerned, because I know that there are in other parts of the town, there are people who really want some things, as opposed to there are areas that really need some things. And the needs don't always get addressed as rapidly
Well,
as they
it's
should.
also whoever has the loudest voice, right? That's-
Right, and this may be a way to broach that issue by evening that out and having money available to address the needs, but that has to be contained in that document, that, the separation between a need and a want.
Yeah, clearly, if we had the money, like we do for water quality or land preservation, we wouldn't be having this discussion about putting it on the ballot. We'd be doing these sidewalk projects out of a fund that we had to do that kind of thing. This creates a fund.
Which has very strong limitations
Small.
on how it's used. It's,
Yes.
that statute is
So does
very
this.
narrow, and
This
that's
would
what I'm
create a
saying.
fund.
That has to be in there, the needs and wants are.
Well, Kathleen read to you what the provisions of what this can be spent on. So that was kind of the area. It can't be spent
No
on parking
potholes.
lots. No potholes, this is
Traffic
not.
and pedestrian
It's
safety.
not repaving, it's not that.
Well, if you're going to share that with us, your draft, so that
When
we
you
can
say
have
that
some
some
input
of the
to it.
projects that we've identified?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
yeah.
I thought this was distributed already.
No,
You
I haven't seen it, so.
Yeah, I thought, and I don't.
And neither have I, and this came up really quick. This really,
didn't- Yeah.
That's why I'm asking the
sorry.
questions I would have in my
I
head.
thought that
I
this was
thought it
all
was
given out.
distributed too, so.
okay. In addition to pedestrian safety, this is also a traffic issue. It would get people out of their cars and onto sidewalks in the immediate area.
That's the hope, yeah.
That's, I'm not kidding. When people have to get in their cars on Foster Avenue to go to Palmquag, they could walk there, but
See, I don't see that.
Who
it's,
would do that?
If there is if we're giving the voters a choice, if there's much downside to that, right?
are we backing ourselves into piercing the tax cap if we approve this today, or,
Absolutely not.
okay.
I mentioned
I've
it
never
because
done that.
I
I
don't
don't
want to
plan
not
on-
mention it to you. I just
Yeah.
want you
I
to be
appreciate
aware, that's all. Whether or not you pierce the tax cap you can create next year 15 new positions, and you're gonna have to text.
This is,
That's another,
Every-
And then,
you can do a
that's
lot
a
of this
reality. that-
every financial decision we make.
has a potential.
So when
Right,
we
and we've
discuss
made them.
rolling out body cameras, there is a potential that
That's a huge thing.
knocks us over the tax cap. When we discuss adding additional police officers, whatever it might be, it's cumulative. The tax cap is cumulative. We have to look at everything, every district, including the ambulance district that's building a new, ambulance barn in Southampton. All these things will affect our tax cap calculation, not just the town stuff.
Yeah, Chase, this body cam issue and the funding and the ongoing requirements for that and the demands of the PBA and the SOA with regard to reimbursements are gonna have a significant impact on your budget, and that's got nothing to do with
Then
this.
you have unforeseen things, like what we're gonna talk about next is the pension fund contributions, which I thought was gonna go down, and apparently not. So where I thought we'd have $500,000 in savings, we actually have $1 million, $1.2 million in new expense. We'll talk about that in a minute, but there's
Until you get a
lot-
reaction from your letter.
Right.
Let's see what happens.
But there's a lot of things that are
Oh,
very
yeah,
hard
all
to
of
predict. Now, there's a lot of money out there apparently for infrastructure, and if we don't have to bond, great. If the county and the state and the federal government provide us with funding for things,
But we do have to
I'm not
match it.
seeing that. I'm seeing the funding for clean water projects and,
That's good.
but not for highway infrastructure specifically. And
we're gonna have
so-
to cost
Well, the
share.
tax base on CPF is very, very different than what we're talking about here, and that needs to be clarified, because I don't think that's there's a parity there.
We have the cost outlays for FIMP too, purchasing.
Yes, we do,
easements.
we do. We have a lot of things
And,
that are
we're gonna
in
get
front
money
of us.
back, but there's gonna be a lag period. And then we have a cost share related to FIMP too. That's,
I can go through a book
you know,
thick on things that we have to do.
and even though that's
what we
gonna,
do.
the
It's, you know,
ECDs are gonna
That's part of our job.
pay the local share, it still goes into our tax cap.
So this is not like an exhaustive list. This was like, let's put on a piece of paper some rough numbers.
Something to comment to.
On some projects, east and west of the canal, breaking it up kind of like evenly as possible.
Yeah, I sort of asked Christine Fenton, like, if you had money to do sidewalks and bike lanes, like, what is out there that's been requested? And these were some of the things. So there was the Noyak sidewalks, we mentioned near Cromer's Market, sort of all leading to Long Beach. And then in Hampton Bays, Lighthouse Road, Foster Avenue, Shinnecock Road. In Bridgehampton, on Ocean Road from Church Lane to the ocean. Spionk-Remsenburg, South Country Road, from the post office to the Spionk River. And Eastport, County Road 80, the Andrea Spoka Park, east to River Avenue.
That's actually an earthen dam, by the way, just to clarify, so.
Okay, in Riverside, Loveland Avenue, Van.
It's a much bigger
Houston,
infrastructure project, is what
Van
I'm trying to
Houten, is that
say.
what I said? Van Houten Street? And then Phillips Avenue. There's certain sections, like Randall Street to Brown Street. Yeah,
The second one's more the narrative, and this one was more the monetary.
so you can see like the number of square feet, linear feet, and then some crosswalks and drainage and incidentals for the sidewalks. So those are all sidewalk projects.
But
And
see,
then-
this is my point. I mean, I would look, if we're in any fiscal stress, and I'm just using that as a kind of euphemistically, that I would look at this and say, well, Andrea Spoka Park is not a need, it's a want. And I might look at something else. I don't want a kid to get killed on a sidewalk because it's not there. There's a big difference in how I personally would make those judgments. And, I just want to.
Well, but you have to have the money to do that
do-
sidewalk to begin with.
To begin with, exactly. yeah.
So, yeah, and I have no
And
problem.
then we can decide how you want to allocate it after the money is approved.
All right.
So this-
And that's making sense to me and is bringing me to,
So
a
these,
different conclusion.
some of the road improvement projects, Shinnecock Hills Extension, this is we have an issue with the community, as you know, that, ever since County Road 39 has had the extra lane and the amount of traffic only has one way out, trying to create another access point for emergency vehicles and even the residents to exit safely their community. That's a project we've talked about quite a bit. Deerfield Road, Head of Pond intersection, it's one that every afternoon backs up for like a mile. It's really bad. That's one where maybe some sort of roundabout type of structure could help. Mitchell Lane roundabout, I mentioned that earlier, near Millstone Road, but the roundabout on Scuttle Hole and Mitchell, it's really not positioned well, and if people drive straight, the trucks drive straight through it. It has to be modified, so there's some money for that. Cromer's Market intersection, I'm not so familiar with some of the issues are there, but
It's the turn on the west side that's, the
Thank you.
rollover
It's-
is opposite, and it's dangerous.
fun.
We had a cement truck roll over there.
Stony Hill Road, I don't know what the issue there is. Stony Hill Road, Noyak intersection.
That's where there's a farm stand there now, a little triangle. It gets a lot of traffic, about 10,000 cars a day, and so with people coming in and out, parking.
Do it
and walking.
a roundabout there, huh?
Yeah, well, we would have to do an engineering study. In fact, we dedicated monies for Noyak to do a bit of a traffic study in this particular area. And the sidewalk that we're talking about would also go in front of that area as well, if it were to come to be.
So how
it's
much
actually-
fidelity are in these numbers?
I didn't realize there was
I
descriptions of
mean,
each one.
relative to engineering
They're
reports?
back, no,
Yeah,
they're
the
kind
next
of back
page
of
is-
the envelope
Okay,
calculation.
so
Yeah,
this
is-
hasn't been discussed with
This is all
highway
very
at
new.
all? Any, okay.
And again, this is just to get a sense of what's out there, to decide how much we should be bonding. Should we do 5 million, 10? Easily, if we did 10, it would get spent.
Well, this is a sampling of how you would spend 10 million bucks. It's not like random choices, This is,
It doesn't mean that these are
Well,
actually
it's
gonna be-
current, but I'm saying, I get back to the needs and wishes.
pretty much everything on here is a need. I mean,
It gives
I
you a
don't know.
sense of what these projects are estimated to cost. These are sample types of projects.
Okay.
So if you didn't want to do some of these and wanted to do others, you certainly would have that flexibility. And I do think it is important that whoever the highway superintendent is, that they're part of the conversation and that they consent.
I think that you folks should probably establish, if you were to do this, establish a committee with the highway superintendent, maybe a town engineer, maybe the controller,
Police
maybe
chief.
maybe the legal, a person from legal, maybe the police, and have that committee come up, be
On
like
how to
a
spend.
screening committee.
The transportation
That kind of
commission.
rates these projects and provides you with a recommendation, similar to like, you have other committees that do that.
With a
for you
fair
as well.
allocation across the
Yeah.
town, so it's not weighted toward
Yeah.
one area.
You could pass a resolution appointing them and giving them their charge. and-
Well, a fair allocation again, I'm going back to the real needs. I mean, there are some real failure points that we have. They're evident to everybody.
I think-
and I think they need to be
Public
fixed.
safety should be the number one priority, public safety.
Yeah.
But there's a lot
If
more.
if the most pressing public safety issues are all west of the canal and all the money gets spent west of the canal, that's fine, as long as the number one priority is public safety. But with that in mind, I think they should be looking to try to be,
No, I
looking across
understand
the
what you're
town
saying.
and addressing public safety issues everywhere. What were you saying, man?
There's a lot more projects here than I expected for $10 million, so I certainly would support that number.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
But
Now that-
I
now
also.
that we
see more
see-
than $10 million.
I also think that there's a lot
It
of
might be
smaller
more than that.
projects.
Yeah.
There's a lot of smaller projects, like a couple off the top of my head are just maybe some lighted crosswalks. I know East Quogue would like one, I know Hampton Bays would like one, and, there's nothing like that on here, so, which I would certainly hope that we'd have additional smaller costs, that we could get a lot of stuff done throughout the whole community, where they're needed and wanted by the community.
Well, I think there's been some flashing speed limit signs and stuff like that, and things like that we can incorporate into the regular
Yep.
budget.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
apologize that
yeah,
this
you mean
list-
permanent
I thought
or
you guys all had
transient?
this, so-
You mean permanent?
All right, so it sounds like the board is shifting a little bit now that they see the list.
No,
And I'm sorry,
I'm not
'cause
going
I
to
thought
commit to
this
anything.
list-
I'd want to read this over and
I
do a
thought
little
the list had
research.
been distributed.
Well, can we agree that we'll at least try to put it on the agenda for next week? and then we
Yeah,
can-
Yeah, I'm gonna have to-
I'm okay with that. I just, there's a lot to read and
No, I
a lot
understand. And I'm
to
available.
digest
You
You
here.
understand, like, I
discuss
have to
something.
call, Kathleen, can you come up for a second? I have to call a special meeting. We don't have another town board meeting before the deadline for putting it on the ballot. So I need to do like 48 hours or special notice.
It's
2 days, yeah, Town Law 62 requires 2 days' notice. You do actually have one board meeting prior to the deadline, however, that doesn't allow us time to have it translated into Spanish. I just want to be fair and be
So
clear.
that's not enough time.
So it's not enough time, but I just want to be clear.
So
You do have
It's
it the
just that
27th.
everything's
but-
rushed, and I'm not understanding
All right, but
that.
my point though, John, is that I'm gonna have to call the special meeting then. Unless you guys tell me today, no, I definitely don't want it, then I'm not gonna call a special meeting. If you're saying, I am not sure, I still need more time to make a decision, then I have to call the special meeting in case you guys decide, yes, you want it. So, it sounds like that, I mean, Rick, you sound like you're okay.
I'm okay with it.
We're okay in general with it, with a $10 million bond. I'm okay with either $5 or $10 million bond. And Julie, where are you?
Between sidewalks and crosswalks and signage and roundabouts, our constituents are asking for these things every day. Public safety, as somebody just said, is our #1 responsibility. I think it's a good idea. I would definitely like to have more clarity on how the specific projects are going to get selected and by who, because I want to make sure that what we're thinking that we want to use it for, that's what it's going to be used for. And I don't want to make light of it, but $13.50 to me, a lot of people go out and buy a cup of coffee for almost that. And again, I don't want to make light because I know that there's lots of people
But it
who
adds up.
struggle, especially now. But I think, you've got to do your cost benefit. Do you want to have your kid walk safely on a sidewalk? Is it worth $13 a year? And I think it is. I'm good for either going ahead ourselves and bonding for it or putting it on the ballot, either way.
Yeah, I personally prefer to give the public a chance to weigh in on it. We certainly don't have to. We could just do it ourselves, but
I think it's important that we do it.
I think if we're gonna put it
How
on
we
the
do it.
ballot, and I think this is sort of where you're getting at, the public sort of needs to know before they vote what this money's gonna go toward. I mean, if they support the projects, whether it's a sidewalk in Hampton Bays or a sidewalk in Noyak, they should have a reasonable expectation if they're gonna tax themselves, that these are the things that are gonna happen and not feel like there was a bait and switch of any kind. So I think that we have to do some public education, and I think prior to the vote, we should sort of put together this list, clean it up and say, this is what we intend to use the money for. I think that would help. John, I know you need more time. Tommy John, do you have any thoughts at this point?
So long as this doesn't back us into piercing the tax cap at this time, because that's very
Can't
important.
guarantee that.
Well,
If it-
it's a consideration, I do believe that government should be able to operate within the 2% tax cap, and, so far, we have been able to.
But if the
And
public votes to spend the money and tax themselves,
I
it
understand.
puts us in that
Well,
position.
those are my concerns, and
I don't really want to
you
pierce
asked.
the cap either, but, the public says, please do these things, and we understand we're gonna have to pay a little bit more for them, and that means we have to pierce the cap. At least the voters, the public has decided to, put us in that situation. It's a little different than
I
if
get
we
it.
do it on our own, and we say
I-
we're
and I
piercing the
personally
cap
don't
because of
feel-
our own actions rather than the public
I
action.
don't feel that the tax cap is applicable it is applicable legally, but when you're growing leaps and bounds as our town is growing, you need the ability to expand
I
these
agree.
services
It's the
without
job
this
of government.
artificial 2%
Right.
cap. It just doesn't hold water when
If your population expands 10%.
You should,
when
you need to,
yeah.
they want 10% more government services. You just can't
Yeah.
expect them
Right,
not.
well, but in that vein, Lynn, in the broader scheme of things, where's the best place to allocate that.
That's why you
that
sit there.
growth, right? So, and that's why I need time to think about it, because I have to weigh this priority versus the other ones that are in my head right now
No,
that we can't really talk about. And
So the way I reconciled it was to say, give the voters a chance, let them weigh in on it, and then we'll act accordingly. It's the most democratic way to approach this issue. We know we need to do these things. We could just do it. If the public says, we don't want you to spend the money doing this, then we won't spend the money. We won't get the sidewalks. If they say yes, then we will.
At the very least, we're telling the public we're listening to them. These are their requests. You know, we're honoring those. We're doing our best to get it done now. Help us, you decide.
You've got a history of doing this in the town, by the way. You know, we, about 8 years ago, the residents along the ocean all they didn't want to see their houses go into the ocean.
The
So they
erosion
voted
districts.
they put a petition together. They asked you guys to raise money, and you pierced the cap, and you raised the money, and you funded their erosion control district.
Right,
So-
and that was taxed in their particular
and that was
district.
taxed by the people, and the
they-
people voted
yeah.
to tax themselves. You're doing a very similar thing here. It's just in a larger
well,
scope.
I don't quite
And
see
people voted to
that
taxes.
comparison there. I'm sorry, that one I don't.
Well, they did
I'm
vote.
not quite with you.
They
They
voted.
voted to pierce the tax.
They voted for themselves, but you're asking a much larger constituency to vote on something that might not necessarily be in their backyard.
But they did vote
you're
to
giving
tax
them that option.
themselves, though it's
Maybe.
not property taxes, but they did vote to tax themselves for water quality and for land preservation through the Community Preservation Fund. Overwhelmingly, they supported that, even though they knew that could affect the cost of, the value of their home when they sold it. So I don't know how the public will vote on this. If I am voting on traffic safety improvements, sidewalks and bike lanes, I'm a yes. $12 a year, that's whatever, $13.50, thank you.
At 500,000 assessed value of home.
After you find that out.
All right,
And
so.
part of this
so
would be
my
us-
home might be double that, right?
Us
I
aggressively,
have no idea what your home is like.
and part of this is us aggressively pursuing grants from other entities.
We do that as a matter of course. That's part of our operations.
So a $10 million investment is going to be
Well, we could
more,
parlay that into 20 million. We don't know. We just
right,
don't know.
depending on
All
how
right,
things
so
are.
I'm-
Okay.
Like, right now, we're applying for a police grant for
Body,
body cams, and the police chief called us today, and he said he wanted to ask for some more money, and we said, well, now it's up to 500,000. Like, so he wants us to match 250, and we would get a match of 250, so he'd spend 500. So those are the types of opportunities that come up all the time, so.
so that's why I got an invite to the Axon picnic.
So Kathleen, can I bring you back up? So I'm gonna need a special meeting. It sounds like there's enough board support to put this on the ballot. I know that Councilman Bouvier would like more time to think about it, but it sounds like the 10 million is the number that you guys want to see in this, and we'll have we'll either vote for it or we won't vote for it next Thursday.
Well,
there'll
you
be a
only
resolution.
need, you only need a simple majority.
There'll be two resolutions for your consideration, from what I'm hearing, for next Thursday. One will be the bond issuance for the bond resolution for $10 million, and then the second will be a resolution deciding to put that matter out to the voters on your own motion with the proposition language and directing submission to BOE.
So we do need 4 votes.
You need 4 votes for the bond, 3 votes for the
For the-
submission to the ballot.
Right, but the bond is first.
Correct.
So you don't get to the 3-vote one until you get through the 4-vote one. So,
Sure.
Make that
So, yeah, so,
You could change
You
your
could
mind in
decide
between
not to
that a
put it
little
to the
bit.
ballot. I mean, you could decide just to do the,
The bond and
Yeah, and
project
not put it
project
on
on a
the ballot.
project basis, so
Yeah.
you have options here.
Yeah.
that's true. You could do the bond and not put it on the ballot. Or I suppose somebody could vote to not do the bond, but once the bond passes, to say, well, I want it on the ballot.
assuming they were the only voter who said
Right.
they didn't want it.
That would be the one, because you need the other 4, so. Okay. Can I ask you a sort of a related question? The Assemblyman Thiel got a bill through this year to change the CPF fund a little bit to add a 0.5% for affordable housing.
Okay,
And I don't think the governor has signed it yet.
okay.
But assuming the governor does sign it, that also is subject to mandatory referendum, as I understand it.
Okay, I haven't seen it, so I can't speak
It
to
is.
that.
So that would have to go on the ballot too. We might need to be prepared for the same special meeting. It's possible we should talk to Assemblyman Thiel because
Yes, and your
we are going to
CPF
have to put it
manager.
on the ballot locally. Otherwise, we'll miss a whole year.
This is the first time I'm hearing this.
So can you reach out to the Assemblyman and find out the status of that? Because
Sure, and I'll
otherwise,
reach out to Lisa Combrink
Lisa
as well.
would know, and I think we're going
Yeah.
to see her today, so.
Oh, she's here apparently.
now that one, I don't know about the Spanish language translation, so that might actually, we might have a little more time.
Everything needs a Spanish translation. You cannot send a
But it
ballot.
might already have been developed in the Albany law. I don't know.
I don't,
Like
it's
who?
a local proposition, so I
Okay.
don't know why Albany would have developed that, but
Okay.
I can tell you that you cannot send a ballot proposition over to BOE without a Spanish translation.
Just for Jim's edification, so, we were talking about the bond, but I also just asked Kathleen if Assemblyman Steele's housing component of the CPF, the affordable housing component, gets signed by the governor, I believe it has to go on the ballot as well. It's subject to a referendum.
Makes sense, yeah.
And it's got to be on the same time guidelines as this, so we might have to do a special meeting
But Mr.
related to
Supervisor,
that.
is that, I mean, I'll look at it, but if that's a local law, you simply do not have enough time to adopt a local law, given notice provisions for prior to August 2nd. Is that a local law?
Yeah, I gotta take a look at it.
We'll look at it and report back, but
So-
I need the board to appreciate that you do not have enough time to notice a local law prior to August 2nd to then be heard and adopted and sent over to BOE by August 2nd.
So this year's probably out then, even if the governor signs it.
It's unlikely, but I'm happy, we will absolutely look at
Hey,
this and
would you-
review it, yes. Do you know
Yeah.
when the governor signed it?
Oh, he hasn't signed it yet. I think I would have been told if the governor signed it.
No.
No, I don't think it does.
Well,
He did not sign it,
That-
he didn't sign it the last time. I think it was 2 years ago.
Right.
so having heard that the governor has not yet signed it, it's very unlikely.
Now, have we found out the status of has the governor signed the alienation?
Not, yeah, I
Yeah,
checked
yeah.
as of Tuesday, and it hadn't been signed yet.
Okay.
It hadn't been delivered to his office yet, or
Right,
signed.
so if he doesn't sign that, then we'll have to figure out what to do with the Parkland alienation bill too.
Right, but hopefully, we have more time for that.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Kathleen. All right, let's move on to,
Okay.
no, I want to talk about the controller's thing, so just stay there, so I'm just doing some updates, and the first thing I wanted to point out, I've already alluded to it, we get projections every year from the state controller as to what the town's contribution per employee, there's a rate for the New York State Pension Fund. So New York State has a requirement that the pension liabilities be 100% fully funded, and so the controller has to make sure basically the account, the New York State Pension Fund, has enough money in it to pay all the estimated payouts of pension for all the employees. And so, based on each employee, how many employees we have in each tier, whether they're police or non-police employees, there is a rate attached to that. The rate going into this year went up, and you probably heard me raise concerns about that. We had to raise an extra $600,000 basically in our tax collection, and it was, to me, understandable. I didn't like it. It was because in 2020, the state evaluates their portfolio on March 31st of the year. Now, March 31st of 2020 was a particularly, you guys all know why, the pandemic was just being understood and the dramatic effect it was going to have. The stock market plunged, and that was pretty much the bottom of the market. It had fallen, I think, by 11% or more, and that was the day they evaluated the value of the New York State Pension Fund. A lot of it's in investment holdings in the stock market, and they said, okay, we're going to have to raise the contribution to get the fund back to 100%. Watching the stock market improve, it went up 50% by the following March 31st. That was a giant return. And so I was anticipating that we would get some relief, or at least not see it go up. And then we got a projection of an even bigger increase than the last one. This was a 16% increase. So instead of $600,000 more that we'd have to raise, so $1.2 million on top of the $600,000. That's a lot. And so I penned a letter to Tom DiNapoli, just basically asking for more detail, trying to understand why we're seeing this unanticipated, at least for us, unanticipated increase when the pension fund itself rose by, I think, $255 billion year over year. So sounds like a pretty big increase. They were taught it was the best performance in the history of the pension fund for, the investments. So I thought it was reasonable to assume that we wouldn't see an increase. And I think Len was surprised as well, brought it to my attention. And so I really didn't know what to say other than, to Comptroller DiNapoli, could you sort of shed some light on this issue for us so we could better understand it? So I CC'd you guys all on this. Now for us, it's $1 million, $1.2 million. For the schools, it's a big hit. For the county, it's a big hit. Anyone in the New York State Pension Fund is seeing this same hit. So I know I'm not going to be the only voice on this. As they all become aware of this problem and they have to increase taxes to pay this, they're all going to be saying, well, we got it last year, we understood that one, but why this year? So you want to?
I agree. And it's going to be, we're starting the process of working on our next year's budget now, so it all kind of goes in. But, it's going to be a budget that's different than our prior budgets because I guess you folks know that the situation in our departments is so overworked and so taxed by the residents' needs of services that this budget is going to have to expand services. And what does that mean? That means it's going to need to add positions. It's going to need to add contractual monies. It's going to need to add things that in the past we'd say, well, let's just get by with what we have. Beyond getting by with what they have, because you can't run a 100,000 citizen town with a 50,000 citizen budget. It just doesn't work. It works for 2 months of the year. It doesn't work for 12 months of the year.
Can I relate it back to the tax cap too? Because we basically, it's like a $100 million budget between the various funds.
That's a little bit higher, but okay, yeah.
A little bit higher, just I'm rounding up, so police in general. So, we know that our employees get a 2% raise, sort of cost of living adjustment. So,
And the union gets 3 because they get a step usually.
Right, so if half our costs of operating in town are salaries, so we're talking about $1 million more in salary. And now we have $1 million here. So we're seeing, this is 2% of the tax cap. Between this and the contractual, that's it. We're up against, if we spend any more money, we're going to pierce the cap. So this has used up basically everything we have left in flexibility, unless certain things change. We may, we were talking about this issue earlier about piercing the tax cap. Mm-hmm. It's very hard to absorb $1 million in 1 year and not have to pierce the cap, unless something else changes. This is $1.2 million. It's more than that bond we're discussing. So,
Yes.
Have you heard back from the Comptroller's office?
not yet.
I mean, on March 31st, the Dow Jones was north of 33,000. doing well. I don't get it. I know it's not all based on the stock market, but a lot of it is.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's sort of what I'm,
that's an important point to make.
these are actuarial kinds of decisions. They have to determine how many people
People
there
are living
are,
longer too, you
how
know.
long they're gonna live. I mean, they may have
The
changed some of
costs have
the.
gone up
Not-
behind this, particularly on
This
medical
isn't
side.
healthcare.
No,
This is not
it's not
healthcare.
healthcare.
This
This
is
is
just the
pension.
pension benefit, but it does, if you live, your average life expectancy goes from 75 to 80, that's a big change.
You have to
And
pay pension, more to you.
More,
So they're maybe adjusting some of the life expectancy tables, and that will change a lot of things.
Right, so they just really have to just explain that to us, because it impacts our taxpayers
Sure.
in a big way.
Yes, and so what I was trying to allude to, though, is this budget, you will see probably additional staff and additional things in it. And it's not because we're just padding the budget, it's because there's real needs out there from, you know, parks and human services
Building
and
department.
highway and,
They're overwhelmed out
you
there.
know, every place we look, they're struggling to maintain, you know, services, so.
no, I think we're all acutely aware of that.
Any questions on this controller letter? You know, I'll let you guys know when I hear. So.
Don't hold your breath.
All right, so I want to go also, the next sort of related issue, but Len.
Thank you, Len.
You don't need to be a part of this next one, so, it is related in a sense to traffic, you know, which is a really emerging, as just a bigger and bigger problem, and we certainly saw it when we discussed the parkland, you know, the swap with the diner to, you know, possibly create a road. You know, most of the comments surrounded all of the back road traffic, you know, on Fanning and some of these other streets that are bearing the brunt of all the traffic trying to get east of the canal and looking for the fastest way, whatever that might be. And if we could keep traffic on the main roads, County Road 39, Route 27, you know, and even Montauk Highway, and keep it from getting onto those back roads, it could take some pressure off. And I felt like a lot of the conversation about putting the pieces together for some future road really was, people were responding to the, you know, really terrible situation with back road congestion right now, neighborhood congestion. So I did reach out to Police Chief yesterday with an idea that's been, you know, tossed around in the past of trying to blink some of the traffic signals, certain key locations early in the morning, between 5 a.m. and 7 a.m. I know 5 a.m. is awfully early, but go out there 5 o'clock in the morning and the roads are jammed. So, and the lights I've asked him to try to request be put on blink for a pilot program, a 1-week pilot program, really 5 days, Monday to Friday, are on Montauk Highway at Canoe Place Road and St. Andrews Road, those two lights. And then on County Road 39, Tuckahoe, and then on Route 27, the Watermill light. That those 4 lights go to blink from 5 to 7 and see how that, you know, see how that works. Does that take some of the congestion off? Sunday, did you want to?
Yes, I would love to say something. I have noticed numerous times coming from west, near, when you're approaching where the Macy's is, and you have the stoplight before that as well. A big problem there is that the turning light that goes on to 24 there does not run long enough to clear out all of the people that need to turn left. And then they stick out and they stop the people who want to go ahead from being able to utilize the green light. And it just sits there with nobody going through it until the next arrow comes up again and lets another 6 cars through. So if that ran longer, it would allow the other traffic to get through
That's
the
a great
light.
suggestion. So this is just one thing that can help. And I think there's a lot of other ideas that are emerging. Are you looking at some of the timing on the lights? Julie, I think you had an idea a while back, which I thought was a really great idea, of to create a lot somewhere east of the canal where contractors could park their heavy equipment. This is when the train was running. You know, I'm hopeful the train's gonna come back, and if we had a secure lot for, because everybody needs their tools, a lot of the tradespeople, they need their tools, so they can't take the train. But if they could leave, you know, the trucks at a fenced-in yard, you know, that was secure, and then take the train, and then maybe get shuttled to that yard. So I'm gonna be reaching out to Supervisor Van Scoyac with this idea and see if we can identify a place that maybe is suitable for that kind of thing. You know, I'm kicking around the idea of maybe putting together some sort of committee to generate some more solutions, like the one you just said, Sandy, so.
Jay, I'd like to also explore weight limits within the back road areas and the different areas. 10,000 pounds is one possibility, and we should certainly review
That came
our
up with
local
this,
law.
that's, could this be no commercial traffic?
Right,
Could we-
no commercial
Could we
traffic.
prohibit no commercial traffic on, if the
Secondary
town ever
roads.
builds this road? And that becomes
Or
an
even
enforcement issue.
beforehand. I mean, it's happening now.
It's happening.
Yeah, on all the back roads.
And
Right,
so there are options, you know.
Right.
And I know some of the constituents talked about no left turns in particular areas, and, you know, so we should
So-
Yeah, there's an
fully flush these things
enforceability
out.
issue that need to talk.
A lot of
So-
people are using Dune Road now, and they're coming
Yeah.
through Hampton Bays and coming up.
Up
to-
Lynn Avenue and then backing up Canoe
the
Place Road.
public has, I think, actually a lot of good ideas as well. Little things, roundabouts in key locations, that's expensive, but roundabouts seem to help the traffic flow. It's been talked about a roundabout where the diner is.
I like that idea.
That's state and county. And by the way, I think you would, obviously, the diner couldn't be there. You need some of that land for the roundabout.
Some roundabouts will specifically
They actually,
prevent
it's
heavy
designed already.
trucks from going,
So, you know.
from
Right.
using them.
So
You
the
know, they
swap
might-
actually would help us, because then we'd have the piece where the diner is to help with the roundabout.
I think that
Although there's.
it doesn't take
Does it,
any,
does it?
the way it's designed, it was like 4 years ago, so
It's
I don't
further
think the
north.
diner issue was ever in anybody's
Okay.
head, but it's designed with 3 entrances.
3
Montauk
entrances,
Highway
yeah.
and 24, but it would be, you know,
could have-
perhaps for the future, you could leave and, I don't know,
Have that
design it
fourth.
with that in mind.
Right.
But it has been designed, the state, I think, recommended it, it was one recommendation to the county.
You know, and I think that where the boathouses are on, it's what, North Road?
Lots of
and
room there.
And Montauk Highway, it clearly needs a roundabout. And that would be, I think, a great spot for a roundabout. But there's a whole bunch of other places. A lot of it's not us. We wouldn't even have to pay for it. It's on state roads and things like that. There's been some suggestions in the Watermill area where some roundabouts could go and to eliminate the Watermill light. The roundabout wouldn't go where the Watermill light is, but one east and one west of that point where there's enough room to do it. So I'm going to propose putting together some sort of solutions committee where we can bring the police chief and some county folks and state folks and town folks and try to generate some ideas, you know, a list of like the top, 50 ideas, maybe some of them, in concert, in connection with other ideas, a little bit here, a little bit there. But I do think the blinking of the lights will make a significant difference. At least we could test it. And that's how the cone program that led to the widening of County Road 39 started out as a pilot program with the cones. And it was clearly worked. And we had actually learned from the U.S. Open a few years before that, not the last one, but the one before it, that putting the lights on blink and creating a little extra lane with cones really did help with the traffic. And so we tried the cone thing. I was able to get County Executive Levy, when I was a legislator, to agree to give it a chance. It started out as like a 1-week pilot program, and then when they tried to take it down, we were getting the call. Phones were ringing off the hook. We had to put the cones back. It ended up going on for all the way till Thanksgiving, from like March to Thanksgiving that year. And then we got the extra lane. So I'm hoping that if we can just test the blinking lights, if it's really successful, then we can push to, do it for a longer period and keep it operational. And we can't do it in the afternoons. because the businesses are all open, you need the ability to, sort of make left turns in certain places. But I think from 5 AM to 7 AM, we'll let a lot of the construction traffic get through. And then that should create some relief even at 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock, because it's had a chance to get through. If you want to get through, come during those periods, 5 to 7. So the chief, none of these lights are town, they're all county and state. So the chief is making a formal request to allow us to do a pilot program. And, hopefully it will happen sometime in August. It gets a little more complicated, September, October, because of school buses and things like that. But if we can test it out in the summertime, then we'll know if it's an effective strategy. Did you guys like the idea too about of having some sort of a solutions committee?
Yeah, there is no silver bullet, but we need to try a variety of things to alleviate traffic, absolutely.
Do you want to,
Creative minds in a room.
why don't we just brainstorm real quick? So obviously the chief of police needs to be on it.
I'd like to be on it.
You're the liaison, so, Christine Fenton, somebody from Municipal Works,
Either her or Tom Hall.
maybe Tom Houghton. We need county, we need state, highway, if Superintendent Gregor wants to be on it, I think he should be invited to be on it.
Of course, or designate of all of these.
Yeah, or designate.
I think that people who sit in the traffic need to have some sort of say,
I have a
like,
couple of those downstairs.
yeah.
So
I
you
mean,
want-
just- and
Most
whether
of my
they're
staff
part of
comes
the
from West.
committee, But I think that we need to hear from the people who are sitting, like, I had some girl,
Right.
called our office or emailed our office yesterday and said, I think the light at St. Andrews has changed again, because it used to be, every time a car would roll up on St. Andrews, it would turn the Montauk Highway red to let them turn. And so a car could come up 5 seconds later and it would turn red again. So then we changed it so it would stay,
So you want a citizen at large, maybe one east of the canal, one west?
somebody just who.
I don't think
Or
the
public
East are
meetings from
complaining
time
too
to time.
much.
Yeah, well, we
Yeah.
can definitely have a
Yeah.
public hearing and solicit.
Yes.
In the
Because I
areas that are
think-
affected.
Yeah, we
If
have a
you just put out
transportation
the
committee.
question in this building, and,
Lots of
like you
experts.
do with some of your surveys, they might have suggestions. Because I heard from one of my staff specific suggestions in Hampton Bays about all sorts of areas and
All
turning.
right, but for putting
That
some
might be
people
helpful to
on,
you.
they could come to the meeting too, or just weigh in anytime they wanted. But in terms of sitting on the committee, we do have a transportation commission. Maybe, who's the chair of that, do you know?
Well, it was Tom Neely.
Okay.
And
Well, Tom Neely,
Yeah, Christine's been doing most of the work.
yeah.
I'm the liaison. Tom was,
Why don't we put Tom on this?
Tony Filarimo is the chair. Tom's title was executive
What-
director, I
Although he's
believe.
not an employee anymore.
I know, but I actually am
Good to
coming
have
to, I'm working on a
background.
resolution to establish a consulting agreement with
Right.
Tom Neely. So that, because we have a lot of stuff that, various signs and no parking areas, and I'm hopeful that we'll see the return of the train. Then we'll have to get the South Fork commuter connection going again.
Do you
So,
have somebody on there who knows
so
the
we should,
systems?
we should put Tom on
The
that.
lighting systems from DPW or somebody from
Well,
county?
we'll have county and state engineering,
Yeah, good. I think that's critical, because some of the things you want to do, you can't do with the equipment that's there.
Anyone else for this solutions committee that you guys can think of?
Yeah, some members of the Transportation Commission. I think Tony would be a good one. Okay.
I put Tom Neely on it. Is that, you mean from our committee?
Tony Filarimo is the chair.
Tony's the chair?
Yes,
Okay, Tony,
Yes.
give me his last name?
Filarimo. I believe I'm saying that right.
Okay, I'll
My
put it.
apologies, Tony, if I'm not.
FEL.
And there may be a couple of others that we...
Maybe, what about Ryan? Public safety? Logistics, it might be good to have Ryan on this.
Mhm.
Well, you got a good basis, you're probably gonna add or detract from it as you move along.
Okay, and we're talking about traffic flows, so, I mean, we could have somebody from like ambulance or fire department or
I think all
school.
those are Hamlet-specific, though, of what their issues are in each, you know.
That's why
each
Ryan's
hamlet.
probably, because he's a good.
We could,
Yeah.
we could have
contact all
representatives from the
over.
Fire Chiefs Council, the town Fire Chiefs Council. They meet, they talk about townwide issues.
Would
But of
having
course, they're all
Ryan-
chiefs and they do
I think maybe
incredible
having-
amounts of things all the time.
Right, and I don't want to take up too much of their
Right.
time, though there's
Exactly.
obviously, everybody's interested in trying to get the traffic flowing and trying to get the traffic off of the back roads. And by the way, you know this, Hampton Bay's back road, that's not the only area. That is really a very, very bad area, but there's, a lot of other
Pleasure
back
Drive in
roads.
Flanders is backed up all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's backed up to East Quogue on Montauk Highway.
Yeah, the morning it
Lewis
goes all the way
Road.
back to Quogue some days.
Yeah.
It's that
Yeah.
It's
That goes back to
everywhere.
West
I mean,
Hampton
Oh, yeah,
sometimes
yeah,
on
it's-
Sunday.
Yesterday
Yeah,
afternoon, through
That's
the,
light.
so many roads were just completely like parking lots.
Another
East-
choke point, a smaller one, is in the Watermill area. Because of Mecox Bay, the light, and there's really only 3 roads going east and west.
That light's problematic.
It's a deterrent in trying to
All
hire
right,
staff.
so I got a good,
No,
I got a good basis to bring you guys a resolution to create a traffic solutions committee. Hmm?
Yes.
Great.
All right. All right, so let me move on to another topic. Tonight, this is the Southampton Town Lifeguard Tournament for 2021, being held at Ponquag Beach, starting at 6 p.m. Watch the lifeguards battle each other in 7 events: distance swim, distance run. No, not in like the Conor McGregor kind of distance swim, distance run, 4-man longboard paddle relay, landline rescue, 4x100 meter relay, run, swim, run, and beach flags. That sounds like actually a fun thing.
That is
So
fun.
that's this evening, 6 p.m.
Seen it a few
at Ponquag Beach. So we have some very talented lifeguards, and it'll be a fun little contest.
They're good at what they do, and I believe that they are going to be going on to take on East Hampton Town Lifeguard.
Oh,
Yes, that's,
This is the
I'm
hope.
sure there's way more to that than what I'm saying, but it's,
so apparently,
it's competitive.
everybody's welcome to go out and watch this competition, this
It's a
lifeguard
great
competition.
event, it's a lot of
Well,
fun.
it's also good to see the people who are protecting our kids, too, and, it's good. They know what they're doing.
All right, so, all right, so this is just a note that's been given to me that even though local officials and medical professionals say that the East End's aggressive COVID-19 vaccination drive efforts and a population that has largely embraced vaccination in general can be credited with pushing the region's COVID infection rates low, we must still remain vigilant. If you have not yet been vaccinated, please do so as soon as possible. You're not only protecting yourself, you are protecting the entire population of the East End. So that's just, a reminder. And the site, the college site is still open. I'm not sure for how much longer, but it's still open. There's other places to get vaccinations. I know some people don't want to get vaccinated, but it really helps everybody when people get vaccinated. I still continue to watch the numbers. I wish that we were down to 0 new cases a day. We're not. It's, Southampton is about 2 cases a day.
The total's 1.7%.
1.7, not 2, according to John. Thank
Yep.
you. Still rounds up to 2.
Close.
1.7 people, I'm going to call it 2
It's
people.
statistically, it's a pretty big jump.
Yeah, well, it was at 1 person a day, now it's closer to 2. So I'm hoping we get that down to 0 again. And I know that, with the hospitalizations and the deaths, you're not seeing the vaccinated people getting hospitalized. It's extremely rare. So the incidents that we're having where people are getting serious cases of COVID are people who are not vaccinated. So if you're out there listening, and, you know, I guess you don't have to take my advice, but you can take the advice of like the entire medical community, and the president and lots of other people, and lots of us have been vaccinated, including myself. And I think the entire town board has been vaccinated, and you know, I can't recommend it more that you go and get vaccinated for your sake and everybody else's sake.
May I make a suggestion? We had a town board meeting here last week, or I guess it was this week, it seems like last week. We did not have separation, people in chairs. And we have an overflow room as well that people can come and watch, but we had no separation here. So most people did not have masks. Or I think even though we're going public, that we should probably still adhere to some of those protocols.
You know, it's not required.
It's not required.
If
I'm
you're
making a
vaccinated,
suggestion.
you know, I think those who are not vaccinated, I think we should create a 6-foot separation for those individuals, as well as a requirement that they wear masks. For those who are vaccinated, I don't see that's necessary.
Well, that is the requirement, I believe, now, right? But it's self-regulating. It's not.
There are some people who are wearing masks that are vaccinated, and that's certainly their prerogative. But if you're not vaccinated,
I'm just saying that because I got some feedback from people who are watching the meeting saying, wow, you know, you guys didn't control, and didn't have the separation on there, so they were just making that comment, so I just thought I'd pass that along.
I understand that. I mean, I went to the last Knick game, you know, at Madison Square Garden. It was, what, 14,000, 15,000
Really?
people, you know.
I didn't know that.
So, I mean, we have 50 people here. Like, I hear what you're saying, John, but we're following all the rules. We're not violating, we could go above and beyond, but we're conforming to what the, you know, the CDC and the state is requiring of us. So if you want to create
I'm just relaying
separation,
what some constituents have
I hear that,
relayed to
and
me.
that means we'd have less people in the room.
Well, that's why we have an overflow room, where we have it live streaming. That was the point that was made.
I hear you. I'm not ready, you know, if the numbers go up, and we're still at like 1 in 100,000. It's a pretty low rate. Maybe it's a little higher. Maybe it's 1 in 50,000. That's positive. I think if the numbers really start to creep up, then I would consider what you're saying and putting back some of those measures. But I certainly would follow the governor's guidance as well on it. But I'm not ready to change what we're doing. And the room was full.
I know, it was standing room.
And we did have another room. If somebody didn't feel comfortable, they certainly could watch in the other room.
They were in the other room.
You had
Some were in the other room.
Some were in the other room. I mean,
And there were
Anyway,
people
it's
that wanted
something
to
to think
address.
about.
you know,
I'm just-
I don't mind, we obviously.
I said
we
I would
conf-
bring it up, I brought
We
it up.
confer with Ryan Murphy, he's been our COVID coordinator, and I thank you for bringing it up. I'll basically, you know, think about it, but at this point, I'm not going to suggest that we change what we're doing. And, you know, I don't know how many more meetings we're gonna have that'll draw that many people. This was a controversial one.
It
so-
depends.
Who knows? But maybe by the time our next controversial meeting comes around, the numbers will be much lower in terms of COVID. So that's all I have for updates. Do you guys have anything you want to bring to our attention?
Parks and Rec tonight are sponsoring a movie in the park, Jurassic Park in Good Ground Park. I think it starts at a little around 7.
Park, that's great.
And we also have our first in-person CAC meeting tonight at the Nutrition Center in Hampton Bays
She's
at
coming up.
7 o'clock for Hampton Bays.
That's great. Who else?
Well, I do have something. We had, we funded Cornell Cooperative Extension, the Marine Center in Tiana, and yesterday, Supervisor, you were there, I was there. It was a kickoff of their scallop program, which was, their goal is to put about 250,000 scallops into an undisclosed area as a sanctuary that the trustees have given them. And it was really a great event. We went out in a barge and we started seeding oysters. I won't tell you exactly where, under penalty of personal injury, I think. But it was
Scallops, right?
scallops, yeah.
Bay scallops.
Bay scallops, and it was a really good event and a good kickoff for a well-funded organization and what they're doing out there. So, and I appreciate you being there, and Julie was there as well. And although she didn't want to go out in the barge,
I'm a
which as a
landlubber.
fisherman's wife, I'm a little. Anyway, I also have.
Can I just say before you change topics, I thought it was a really nice event. I really appreciate all the work you're doing with the Marine Education Center and Cornell Cooperative Extension. And I think I think his name is Chris Smith,
Christian.
who spoke a little bit. He talked about shellfish and scallops sort of being part of our heritage, and I really appreciated that. But also the benefits to the environment because of the way they filter the water, and the economy, because people make their living off of harvesting shellfish and selling shellfish, and then of course we get the benefits of eating it. So there's really a lot of positives that from a program, and there's also a lot of opportunities for the public to get involved in. It was really nice to see when we got to the Tiana Bayside facility that all the people who participate in that, is it a SPAT program? Or what
The
do you-
SPAT program, that's for oysters.
That's for oysters, yeah.
Citizen gardens. that's
So
set
if
up
people
there.
want to get involved in aquaculture, I think it sounds like it's a lot of fun,
Yeah.
and they get a product at the end that they can consume or share with
They
friends.
do, and it provides an oyster seed, which is then taken back to South Holyoke over winter, and that also provides, so they provide all the spat.
And it's very affordable.
It's affordable, it's about $200, and you get a cage, you get a line, you get oysters, you get spat. So you, at the end of the summer, you have oysters, and you're also doing something really good for the water.
And you're
So a
learning.
typical oyster is filtering about 50 gallons a day, full grown, that's a
And,
lot.
and you're learning a lot about marine ecology.
Yep.
Aquaculture.
Well, Kim Barber, who manages it for Cornell, Carolyn Monaco is the artist there. If you go there, you'll see she takes plastic that is taken off the beach and she turns it into sculptures, and it's kind of a nice
Cool.
use for that.
Can you also, speaking of that, we did scope out where this,
The New York State Marine
the
Rescue.
tortoise, what is it? Not the turtle.
The sea turtle.
Sea turtle, thank you. The sea turtle sculpture that we discussed at the last work session could go. We found what we think is a really prominent and appropriate spot as you first pull into the Tiana Bayside facility. There's a concrete pad that's already there separating the north and south, the entrance and exit, basically. And so we wouldn't have to pour a slab, we just basically bolt it into the concrete, and you'll see it right when you
Yeah.
arrive.
Well, the nice thing about it is that there's a lot of students that are being taught marine education there, so they get really involved in it. We have schools that come to the center, so Carolyn will hopefully guide the young students there to actually paint that with the whole class being involved in that. It'll be a very prominent thing you'll see right in
Have
front
we
of.
done a resolution to accept it yet? If not, I think we need.
We haven't
to-
gotten it yet. I just sent
We
the
just got the
info out.
presentation.
Yeah, no, I mean
Last week.
the sculpture, so we've already got a space for it,
It
so we're
sounds
just waiting
like
for
we'll need a
it
resolution, though, for
to
me
to accept it, but they haven't,
sign,
they have to look at,
agreement.
make sure it's a good place for them, so as soon
Right.
as that happens, but
Jim,
we
can you
we moved along quickly. on
Prepare a
it.
resolution authorizing the supervisor to accept
Sea turtle.
Except the fiberglass sea turtle.
large fiberglass
Sculpture.
sea turtle
Put it next
to be
to
to be placed at the discretion of the, I guess, Parks Director at the Tiana Bay facility.
Yeah, post-painting.
And Kristen was there, she also supported.
Kristen, yeah, we.
She liked the
we looked at
spot.
so.
So, but anyway, so, John,
Yeah,
you
so-
had something else?
Yes, oh, just, it's such a great center. I really suggest that people come and see what goes on there. I know Sunday's a member of the SPAT program as well, so I feel we do a lot of good, and Sunday's up to all sorts of good things with new, better practices and how to grow oysters and.
And there's an article in the
And there's an
Southampton
article
Press
in the
today,
press
which
about
I'm
it.
very proud, my husband and his creation of
It's a neat thing, and
Yes.
that way we don't have more plastic in the water. We have less plastic, because this cage is all wooden, so I think it's very cool.
very exciting.
So I do have another thing. The Affirmative Action Task Force, yesterday, we met, and I just want to let people know that there's a civil service test prep workshop on Saturday, August 7th. That's for people who want to join government, work for government, young people who want to do that. In order to take the civil service test, you can get a class to prep you and help you do that, so that you get a better opportunity to find a job in government. So it's on Saturday, August the 7th, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Crowhan Flanders Community Center. That's 655 Flanders Road in Flanders. If you need any more information, you can call Juan Becerra. That's Juan Becerra at 631-702-1921. And it's also up on our website. It's a little thing like this that you can see and get all the information that you need. But it's a great program to help young people get into government, which we
And
sorely
we
need
do,
out here.
we do have openings, so.
Yep, we definitely have openings.
And yeah, people may not understand that sometimes we can't consider them for a position unless they've taken the
They
civil
take the
service
civil
test.
service tests, yep.
So, thank you, John, that's
Sure.
very important.
No, it's a good thing, and it's a great group, so.
Anything else, other updates?
Yeah, I'm sorry that I missed the event. I was up in SUNY Purchase with my son, doing orientation, so our last one's going away to college, and
Been there,
missed
done
that. And I was sorry to have missed it, particularly because of the news this week, and now is that the Department of Commerce has declared the Peconic Bay area a disaster, a fishery disaster, with the collapse of the Peconic Bay Scow. So, that work is certainly much appreciated, and I know that this board is keenly aware of the importance of the Peconic Bays and our southern bays as well. But I thought that was particularly bad news that we should be discussing at this board, and, doing what we can to reduce nitrogen and phosphates in the water and other things that are, really destroying our fisheries. It's not entirely
And not to
gone.
interrupt you, but I appreciate what you're saying. The Peconic Estuary Program is very, very aware of that. and
Oh, I know.
Working hard on that issue, so I appreciate you
And
bringing
we're
that up.
fully funding them, as we've, funded the Tiana Center as well. So that was bad news this week. That's all.
I have something. Excellent. Our Dark Skies Committee advised me that there's, I hope I'm saying this right, Perseid meteor shower,
Perseus, yeah.
on August 11th and 12th, and they're looking to have a viewing location. I'm working with Parks Department, probably like Road K or something like that. So I hope everybody can go out and either go to the beach or lay in your yard and look up and see the beautiful skies. They're also...
Perseus refers to the constellation. It's sort of the area where you're likely to see
And
the meteor shower.
Oh, good, okay, thank you for that info. The Dark Skies Committee is also looking to do a lights out night, and whether, we're just gonna announce it to our residents so people can voluntarily participate if they want, or perhaps I was thinking of speaking with Ryan Murphy about maybe there's some buildings that we can dim out for an hour or something like that, or turn off for an hour. And we're not quite sure of the date yet, but I'll certainly bring all the details when I get them. And my final thing is, please donate to the Little Food Pantry at the Crowhan Center. It is being used like crazy. There's people who go there looking for food, and it's empty. We're trying to keep it stocked. I know that Jamie Bowden had got a box, I think, down by CRC starting today, so you can come drop off stuff here. Anybody can go to the food pantry and drop off stuff. And I think more importantly, if you're in need, please go there or to some of the other food pantries around town. People are trying to help. We know that people are struggling with food security, and these pantries are open 24/7. So please help donate, and please take food if you need.
So could I just suggest something as well? The Montauk, it used to be the Montauk Observatory, it is now the Montauk Observatory, the Hampton Bays group, the Montauk group, and also the East Hampton group, Diane McCormick, who's...
We get emails from her.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
get that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So they're doing similar things, but we're kind of looking around for an observatory. We've been doing that for some time now. We found that the darkest place out here is actually behind the community college in West Hampton, of all places, and there's county property there.
Sort of in the middle of the Pine Barrens.
Yeah, it's kind of in the middle there. It's a really great observation space. So if you're already in touch with her, that's a great thing. And I did just want to make add one more thing. That's this civil service tests are free. I forgot to add that. That's an important point.
They're typically not free.
No, we're giving them free. That's why we're doing that, to help young people and underprivileged people to get into
We're
government.
paying for the cost of the test?
Yes. It's done cooperatively with them. So it's a little prep workshop.
On a needs basis, I take it?
Yes.
Income that will cover
Well, I can
first?
read you the Southampton Town Affirmative Action Task Force in the town of Southampton will be offering free civil service test prep workshop conducted by the Eastern Suffolk BOCES on Saturday the 7th, 10 to 2, at the David Crowhan's Flanders Community Center. The class will cover information on how Suffolk County civil service works and how to prepare for a civil service examination. Although the workshop is free, attendees will need to register ahead of time. If you have any questions regarding civil service employment at the town or any other matter, please feel free to contact Juan Becerra, as I indicated earlier, at 631-702-1921.
So I just want to make a distinction. So the class is free. It's a preparation.
It's a prep class to take the civil service,
The test is still,
that has a cost.
It's like about $100 roughly.
It does have a cost.
And we've talked about trying to
But
figure out.
we're working with communities to help offset those costs and subsidize that as well.
Exactly, because that's a barrier for certain people.
Absolutely.
The tests are like $35.
Are they?
Yes.
35,
I
and
think
some are
that's the top.
50, I think, also.
I haven't seen
Yeah.
it, but
I
the
know that
majority of them
The
are.
police test is
30.
more expensive, it's like 100, but,
Yeah.
so let's just say it ranges from 30 to
To
100.
around 100. It's-
But we have talked about making some funds available for people where that is a barrier.
Yep, no, and we're working on that.
We can't
with
waive
groups
the
like
fee.
OLA
We
and-
can't waive the fee, it's not our fee, it's the county's fee.
Right.
The county ought to waive the fee, but we might be able to provide grants, small,
Well,
So
you'll
that
probably
people
get a
can-
call from Minerva right
On
as
the
soon as
county
you leave this
application,
room.
they do have, if you need scholarship, if you show that you need the
You could,
financial aid, the
that's right,
county
you
will
can
waive it.
show if you have, yeah.
County can waive it? Okay.
Yeah, it's
But-
on there.
There's a reticence to do that in some communities. so
Sure.
We're trying to bring people forward and.
But I just wanted to make that clear to those who are listening, that this is a free class.
The
The
prep
test
class is
itself
free,
is
the
not
test is not,
necessarily
yes, and thank
free.
you for that
And
clarification.
anyone can go to this class?
Anyone.
Anyone? Okay, good.
Okay.
I think it should be mentioned how much we appreciate the people who do work here in the town of Southampton. They've taken these tests, they're well prepared, and they work hard as well. And we certainly need people in government doing these jobs to, make sure that the services are delivered and things work right. They do a fine job.
Yep, I agree.
And I know you all know that, but since we're talking about the civil service test.
Well, it's an interesting, I would suggest that any of you at any time sit in on an affirmative action task force meeting, because you gained a different perspective on some of the obstacles that are in front of people that you might not otherwise understand. And I think that's really important to bring that point forward, that we're trying to break down those obstacles, and they're doing a great job.
All right, any other updates? Okay, so we're gonna switch over to executive session, which we'll do in a different room. We have acquisitions to discuss, land acquisitions, we have litigation to discuss. So I will make a motion to end our work session and go into executive session on those items.
Second?
Seconded by Councilwoman Hofstad, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we are adjourned for all other purposes.